Looks good. Welcome back to the Dynasty Heat Seekers live stream, and today we've got a special show. We have our first guest, Addison Hayes from Dynasty League Football, better known as DLF. And we've also got the co-host, the regular co-host, Brad Menendez and Taylor Cornell. First, Addison, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being our first guest. Uh, why don't you tell everybody about what you do?
I see a frozen video.
So do I.
Okay, I thought maybe it was just me.
Well, it's
There it
it
is.
seems we have guest technical difficulties, which just only seems right. Everything else went off without a hitch as we were getting going, which is not normal for us. And boom. And he sends me a message, dude.
Yep. We know that pain.
I mean, fortunately for him, the RotoHeat fan base expects it. So
Right? It's like
nobody's freaking out right now. Everyone's like, "Oh, that's about right."
Give it about
9:02.
15 minutes.
Yeah, it started about
he
9:05.
sent me a screenshot. His computer said your PC ran into a problem. You are going to have to restart. 25% complete. So we'll get him back in here in just a second. So that is definitely very ironic. Uh, Literally everything off without a hitch, and then boom. Uh, all right. Uh, yeah, Taylor, give him a dance show. Brad, while I'm texting him, why don't you give people a little bit of rundown on what we are going to talk about on the show today, and then I'll reintroduce him when we get him back in. Right? Uh, Kevin Pond says, classic. This is classic. This is classic Roto Heat style. We definitely are used to some technical difficulties. Do that, Taylor. That's perfect.
Brad also put a post up recently on our Facebook page, getting an idea of some players that you're interested in hearing about. So the RotoHeat content team here is going to be
Oh man!
providing
So
content.
here's the thing. So our when I'm adding in the Skype, right? I have to pick one of the audio samples from the guest that I have, and I had Addison's turned up. So once Addison's video dropped out, it didn't pick up any of your guys' audio. So you guys have been silent since Addison dropped, and it's just a nice little tumble effect here that we've got from Addison from his computer restarting. But they let us know that they couldn't hear you, and we can just start all that over. Uh,
What is this called? What did they call this? The surrender cobra or whatever when fans do this in the stands, usually after something bad happens
yeah,
to their team.
It's just the best. We've got 19 of you guys in here right now watching. Um, I want to thank Legend ACG and Gabe Messner and Kevin for letting us know that you couldn't hear Brad or Taylor. Um, Once this pops in, we should be able to get Addison back. Kevin says I'm sure it was good stuff, and I'm sure it was too because nobody hears the good stuff. Okay, guys, Brad, fill them in on what we're gonna cover in this episode. Brad, talk.
I'll just mess with you. All right. So, for those of you that can now hear me and see me, we're going to be talking a lot of different buy sells. So, we're going to be talking about buy lows, buy highs. We're going to be talking sell lows, sell highs. And you know how we do. Outside of technical difficulties, we always have a good time. We'll take some listener questions. We also want to get your guys's buy lows, sell highs, sell lows, because we're going to talk a little bit about some of those as well. And it'll be a good show. We're excited to have Addison join us, and once we get him back on, he'll have some good content because he does a great job over at DLF.
Taylor, you were telling them about some of the great content we've been dropping. Why don't you say that out loud this time?
Yeah, well, it was out loud last time. It was just not able to be heard. Yeah, so we've been dropping some content recently. Most recent was Brad's article today for Ronald Jones, talking a little bit about what his value looks like going forward, love him or hate him. He's a divisive fantasy asset. He also recently, Brad, not Rojo, put up a poll in our Facebook group, getting an idea of what players you're most interested in hearing about. So we've captured those. We're going to divide and conquer them, the RotoHeat content team, and get some pieces out just talking about fantasy outlook for those players you're most interested in. So if there are certain things you are interested in hearing about, please let us know on our Facebook page or in the Discord app, and we will work on pumping out the stuff that you want to read.
Exactly. I just got the dreaded, I don't know how long this is going to take message.
Do you want me to jump on Fortnite and see if he's playing?
He just said, screw this. These guys suck already. I'm leaving. I'm going straight to Fortnite. See, that's why'd you have to bring up gaming before we got live? You should
I know. I should have. I got him.
You
I
should
got
have
him all
saved
excited.
that for the end of the show. He was like, "Man, I only got 14 solo wins. I gotta get number 15." Like, and then he's like, "Oops, update." Um, oh man. Uh,
Poor Addison.
yeah. That.
Luckily enough, he doesn't need us.
So what should we do? Should we continue going, or should we stop and see if we can get him in here and then restart? Or we got 17 people in here. We gotta figure something out.
Well, I mean, we could talk about a little bit of the news that's been going out. You know, we got the Austin Eckler extension. I mean, we got some fantasy stuff we can talk about.
Okay, so what were your guys' opinions on the Austin Eckler contract and how it affects his value going forward?
He immediately becomes a running back that, you know, if you have, you're keeping because he's playable. I mean, when he subbed in for Gordon for, you know, 5-6 weeks last year, he put up some decent numbers. I mean, he was off the charts most of the weeks and RB, you know, an RB1 category for most of those weeks. So I'm excited. I mean, 25 years old, it makes me think they're not going to re-sign Gordon and they're just going to find either a backup or go with Justin Jackson, who's a guy they kind of liked previously. So I think it's a good move for Eckler. Obviously, Gordon, it just means he's probably not going to be back. But Taylor, what do you think about it?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I think at least in this situation, we know how he's going to be used for the most part in Los Angeles. And we've seen him coexist with another running back kind of in a committee type of role. So I think even if they bring somebody else in, he's going to retain his value. What would have worried me is if he went to another team, a new system, not knowing exactly how they're going to deploy him. So it did bump him up a little bit in my rankings. I agree with you. They'll probably let Melvin Gordon go. We'll see where he ends up, and then they'll probably just try to fill in. I don't know how much they trust Justin Jackson. I think Anthony Lynn at the Combine was talking him up a little bit. But that's coach speak this time of year. So they might take somebody later on and But I think Eckler solidified himself as a key cog in that offense.
What say you, Chief?
I definitely think that his value goes up, and just on the basis that the contract they gave him leans me to believe that he's not just going to be used, but he's going to be heavily used. And yes, most of that is going to be in the passing game. He's not a guy that's going to tote the rock 20 times a game, probably not even 15 times. I would say probably 10 to 12 on the high side for carries. But he's going to be heavily used as a receiver. We already seen the value he has. Even when Justin Jackson was taking carries, Melvin Gordon was involved in the passing game as well. So he did lose a little bit of that to Gordon when Gordon came back. But just them committing to him and and most likely Gordon being gone, it's nothing but good. I think high running back 2 with back end running back 1 upside. We already seen that this year, so I don't know why he couldn't do it. Obviously, we've got some running backs coming into the league and whatnot, but he definitely definitely is more valuable today than he was a week ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Kevin over on our Facebook group asked the question, is this a bad time to try and buy Eckler?
I would say, yeah, it's a bad time to try to buy Eckler.
Yeah, I would think you probably want to wait till after the draft and see kind of what LA does at the running back position, because if they draft a guy that people kind of like, then maybe that'll bring the price down a little.
Yeah, because I dropped an article on literally his value after the signing, and I think what's going to happen is that, he was probably in a decent spot where he was at as like a late third, early fourth rounder, just because he's not a guy that's going to get a ton of carries. So he's only got that one dimension lockdown. But I think what's going to happen is with that hype, and depending on what happens when draft season comes along, you might see him going in the back half of that second round to the front end of that third round, and his value is going to shoot up a little bit. Then it's probably going to come back to normal after that. But I think now would be a terrible time to go out and try to buy him.
What about you, Taylor?
Agreed. No, I agree on all points. I would wait for some sort of event, whether it be the drafting or signing of somebody, even if they're not super talented, to maybe drop his perceived value enough to then open a buying window. But right now, I don't think there's a real buying opportunity there without ponying up a premium for him, which I'm not sure. I mean, this year I think he returns like RB3 or RB4 overall numbers. I don't know if that's going to be sustainable production. So I think like the players that you're willing to pay the premium for are those guys that year in and year out, the Zekes, the Saquons, the Christian McCaffreys. You'll have to pay up and you're okay doing it. I don't think Eckler falls in that class, so I'm going to wait for something to open that buying window a little bit.
He's always going to be like 7 to 8 touches lower per game than them guys, because they're going to get the 18 to 20 carries, plus they're going to get their 5-6 receptions and be in that mid 26s, and he's probably going to be in the 16 to 17 touch range, and that's a lot of work. That's a big gap to make up, and he was very efficient finding the end zone last year. Really in his whole career he has been. Like, I didn't realize until I was starting to do that article that, like, for the amount of touches that he's had, he's found the end zone a lot. And that's something that just, obviously we know touchdowns are very fluky and there's a lot of variance there, so that's going to be hard for him to keep up. But Addison just said his computer is booting back up, so hopefully we'll get him back in here soon. So what other news do we got, Brad?
The only other whispers, well, first, Bill over in our Facebook group says, thank you, Taylor, for the 2019-2020 rookie draft article.
You got it, sir.
I will say, Bill, Taylor in our chat was like, this Bill better appreciate this work. He better appreciate it.
That's not exactly the tone I was using.
Brad, isn't that how it came through in text form, though?
Maybe.
He's like, somebody better say this MF
I
is
think
spit, or else
I
he's
think I
spit.
mentioned it in the article. When that idea came through, I was like, oh, pretty good idea, interesting exercise. And part of the reason it took me so long was because I just put out that 2019 rookie redraft, right? And so I'm kind of redrafting the top, I think I did top 12. So then I'm thinking, well, I've got my dynasty rankings that we are, have out on our website. I should make sure that I actually have my 2019 rookies in that order if that's really how I feel about them. So I had already been kind of maneuvering around my dynasty rankings. Then I'm doing this one that's a blended 19 and 20. And again, I need to make sure that my actual dynasty rankings reflect that. So it turned into like a huge project because then I ended up revamping my dynasty rankings too and trying to pepper in these 2020 rookies. So, but we're
Nice.
all good now.
Oh,
So
he loved
That's
it.
awesome.
Bill said he really appreciated it. So that's what we try to do.
yeah,
So anybody that's watching, if there's something that you want to see covered, we're here for the people. We will definitely try to cover any player or any topic that you want to see covered, whether it's video form, article form. And damn, my YouTube chat just went completely black. That's not good. I need them. What happened?
Well, the other news that's semi-fantasy relevant, Robbie Anderson was on NFL Live on Tuesday and said there's mutual interest in returning to the
No.
Jets. And yeah, my next question was, so how bad does that make his dynasty value if he goes back to the Jets? We'll start with Taylor while Rick's doing his thing. Taylor, what do you think about
yeah.
Robbie?
I've never really been a huge Robbie fan. So I guess to me it doesn't really change his perception of value for me too much if he stays because I already was pretty low on him. I think the rumors, weren't even really rumors, but the predictions of him maybe going to Green Bay or something like that were interesting. And actually, I was hoping that would open a sell opportunity for me on the teams that I have him. I mean, I don't think staying with the Jets is the worst thing. I mean, Gase is terrible, but you are at least with a decent quarterback. I mean, imagine if he went to the Bears or something like that. That would just be terrible with Trubisky there, or maybe Andy Dalton, which would be
No.
an upgrade.
We do this every Tuesday. No.
You will take Andy Dalton, and you
I
will
would
give us a
well,
third
I
round
would
pick.
take Andy Dalton over Trubisky with the way the team is built, but I would like to explore other options first, please. Like, let's put him as a
Yeah,
last
yeah, go
resort.
for it.
Um,
You guys are talking about Andy Dalton's about to go win a championship in New England. What are you talking about?
um,
Just so that Bill Belichick can say, I'm the
I,
man.
I, there's been rumblings that they may have interest in him, but maybe not be able to get it done because of cap issues. Green Bay, which I would hate as a Bears fan, but Robbie Anderson is, and
Yeah.
last year you can. I don't care what receiver it was. I mean, Jamison Crowder runs 4 yard routes, so it worked out pretty well for him. But like, I don't care what receiver it was. With those quarterbacks that played for half the season or more, were not good down the field. Eagles, as
Yeah.
Michael said in the chat, is another team that would be interesting for him. Um, but I just think he's very skilled, and it's been very unfortunate with some injuries. And then him and Dalton were finally starting to kind of get on the same page towards the end of Dalton Darnold, his rookie year.
It's
But
on your
yeah,
mind.
it's like that bad song that gets stuck in your head, and it just keeps ringing and ringing
Yeah,
and ringing. Um,
yeah, I've been living
yeah,
that. So
Gabe. Addison is booting his computer back up, and we're gonna get him back on here. But his computer crashed right when we started. Literally, as soon as I introduced him and he went to talk, it crashed. But he is working on getting back on here, and that's why we're just filling some time here, hoping that it's not too much longer. But and then we'll get into the meat of this episode. But what are your thoughts on Robbie, Brad? We've shared ours. One of us like him, one of us hate him. Um, so break the tie. Who wins?
I've, well, that'll be the tough thing because I've always been kind of indifferent on him. Like I have zero Robbie Anderson
Well,
shares.
one and a halfers, one and a
So
half.
Right, basically. If he goes somewhere else, like if he goes to one of these teams that knows how to throw to receivers, I think that would be good for him. I think if he stays in New York, that just continues to muddy up his value. I mean, if the Jets can take a step forward and not be crappy, then maybe that'll work out for him. But I just don't trust Adam Gase, and I don't have any reason to believe in that offense, at least at this moment. I did get a direct message going back to our Eckler question. One of the people said they heard that Winston might get moved to the Chargers. Does that change Eckler's value if they get a quarterback like that?
Uh,
So that is Ron, the direct messaged
I
me.
would have to think that it doesn't, simply because they just paid the man, so they're going to utilize him. It actually might open up that short game a little bit more for him. But I mean, Phillip Rivers was kind of the same type of quarterback that Winston is, that free throwing downfield, heave it up and pray type quarterback. So I don't know that the game plan would change a whole lot, even with Winston in there. What about you, Taylor?
No, I mean, I think like you said, he's been paid, so he's going to get touches there, and I think it's also encouraging the versatility that he's showed. So being a running back, operating as your typical running back out of the backfield, running the ball, running routes from there, but also splitting out wide, and doing things that way. I think he's able to contribute in a number of ways that the specific quarterback doesn't necessarily hinder him in any way, shape, or form.
Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those guys that likes Winston. So doing something like that, I didn't say he's amazing. I just said that I like him. I mean, I
You want to
think
hang out with him in an Uber?
no, because I don't want to get
What
Too
stuck
about
with
a
soon.
anything.
supermarket?
Right. I don't want to get stuck with the crabs. So, the thing that I like about a move like that would be is that would give the Chargers the ability to go and shore up all these other needs they have, like offensive line. I mean, their offensive line has been dreadful for how many years now? I mean, they really need to do that. So they can fill the quarterback position with a guy like Winston, or maybe go pay a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, or something like that. I like that better. I think Eckler's value is kind of insulated because, like you said, they paid him, so they're going to use him. So that's kind of my take. I think he's going to be okay either way, no matter who they have back there. But
So, Taylor, we've had this discussion a lot lately. Basically, the Chargers are choosing to keep a guy. Oh, the screen went
look
blue.
at that. I see
Um,
a
the
certain something.
Chargers have decided to spend what? So his contract, if I'm not wrong, I gotta remember, is
I already know where this
about
is
8 million
going.
a year, right? Is what it was, wasn't it? 3 years, 24 million or something. Sure. They
What's your
chose to
point,
keep
Rick? What's your point?
they chose the undrafted guy over the guy that they put a decent amount of draft capital in,
Which one's that? Justin Jackson, or
Gordon,
you talking about Gordon?
because Gordon's not staying.
Uh,
They could have paid that guy what? Well, they offered him what, 11, but a
yeah, no.
little bit more. If they offered him 11 today, he's taking it. I guarantee it. If they offered him 11 today, he's like, "Oops, I messed up last year. I'll take the deal now." Um, I feel like
Yeah,
Addison's slowly getting back in here, so hopefully we'll have
he
him.
is. I love our community. They are amazing. So Kevin responded in Facebook. I don't want to get stuck with the crabs. It needs to be the next RotoHeat shirt.
All right, I will design it. If you don't buy one, I'm booting you.
Winston with the crab hands, right there.
No, I can't put Winston on there because then they'll come after me and want royalties and all that fun stuff. But
No,
we can put a crab throwing an interception.
Accurate.
I like.
Oh,
All right. To answer
I
your
like it.
question, after somebody has been drafted and produced in the NFL, their draft capital no longer matters to me.
my point is
So,
though is that you can't. if you wait until that happens, you miss the value, right? So I don't know if you
For
read my
for some people, you will, yeah.
right, but
But for the majority, you won't. But if you're guessing that every UDFA or sixth or seventh round pick is going to eventually be something, you're going to be wrong more often than not. So it's basically for me playing the odds early on, and then later on, if I'm proven wrong, then adjusting.
that goes the same. But do you not see a trend that more undrafted guys are getting an opportunity? Addison,
Look at that handsome so-and-so back with us.
Woo!
look.
Do you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can hear
Yes.
you. Look very
Okay.
relieved that your computer's working.
Oh my gosh, dude. It just like as soon as you said, "Why don't you introduce yourself?" my entire screen went blue and it said an error occurred. And I'm like, just yeah. That's never happened before. I don't know
Well,
what that
it
was.
was so funny because like our shows never start off right, and as soon as we introduced
Hmm.
you, we had that technical difficulty, and then all the audio's running off of your channel. So these guys were talking for like 4 minutes, and then people were like, "Hey, we can't hear them."
Nice.
So it was a snowball effect, but we got you back, and we are. Uh, I'll let Taylor off the hook on this undrafted free agency talk, and
To be continued.
we'll discuss that later. Joz Whedon over on YouTube, how you doing? We are going to be talking some buys sells with Addison Hayes from DLF and DLF TV over on Twitch and on YouTube. So make sure you follow those guys over there. And Addison, we're going to try this again. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell everybody where they can find you and what you're up to?
Yeah. So I am with DLF right now. I used to run a site called FF Statistics that was a new site that kind of started at the beginning of 2018. It was primarily designed for a lot of fantasy football tools and data. And we have since migrated and moved a lot of those tools, with more coming still, over to DLF after they acquired all of that stuff. So I'm with them now, and then I'm also helping them build out their YouTube and their all the TV episodes that we're doing right now. So check that out on YouTube. You can literally just type in Dynasty League Football and search for channels and stuff, and it should pop up. We got a bunch of videos up there now. I do a show every Monday called Drafting Lessons, where I grab a guy and we go through a mock draft and try to get inside their process. And then we got a mailbag episode, some rookie film stuff. We just had a partnership with another site, and they have all of their max speed videos. They're literally like 15-second clips of all these rookies with their max speeds from the season or their career in college. So really cool stuff we got going on over there, and I'm really excited for all the content that we're pumping out.
Yeah, it's definitely great stuff. I know I've watched some of your drafting lessons and some of the other videos that you guys have put up, and it's great stuff. And we've always been a big proponent for people to soak in as much information from as many spots as possible, and then form their own opinion on who they like and whatnot. And I definitely love what you guys are doing over there. I love that you guys are getting into the
Appreciate it.
video aspect. So that's always
Mhm.
easiest for me when I'm working during the day, is to put some video up on one of the screens and go. So I love it. Um, all right.
Absolutely.
So our first segment is going to be buy lows. And you've been doing these drafting lessons. I'm sure some guys have stuck out to you. So after we get through this, if there's some other guys that weren't mentioned that you have noticed going way lower than you would know, we would love it for you to share a couple of those names as well. But why don't you go ahead and tell us who is your first buy low for this early off-season stretch?
So the first player that I have that came to my mind was actually a guy that I did a podcast episode on, my own podcast, the Fantasy Minute, and that's on Ronald Jones, which is kind of a gross name, um, but I mean there's some stuff in there that I really like to see from Ronald Jones, as you know, especially from his rookie year on into his sophomore year, there was just a massive, increase in production because he did basically nothing his rookie year. And I know that uh, that there is a possibility that Tampa Bay brings in a running back. I know a lot of people have, one of the top free agents like Melvin Gordon, or maybe Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson get traded there or something like that, or they're one of the favorites to nab a guy like Cam Akers or DeAndre Swift or J.K. Dobbins, someone in the rookie draft that they can then just plug in and have a versatile 3-down back. But it's quite possible to me as well that Ronald Jones goes into 2020 as the guy, and I think Bruce Arians isn't really high on getting another running back. I think he likes to just use the ones that he has and see where that goes, unless it's like super horrible at the position, like kind of like Peyton Barber. Which brings up another point where I like Ronald Jones a lot because Peyton Barber is a free agent, so it's quite possible that Ronald Jones does go into 2020 as the guy, and he was significantly better than Peyton Barber last year. He had over 4 yards per carry. I think he increases as well in the target aspect, especially if they were to have Jameis Winston come back as well. There's just a lot of stuff that I liked. Who was a top 20 running back over the second half of the season last year. And because everybody's worried about the probability of them bringing in another running back, his price is super low. That I just think it's kind of worth it to just kind of see what they do. And even if they do bring in another running back, you're not paying a whole lot for Ronald Jones, in Dynasty in general anyway. But he has the potential to be, an RB2 that you're getting at RB3, maybe RB4 prices, depending on the owners right now.
Yep. Absolutely agree. I literally, well, and it's funny that you picked him. He was my first buy low because I just wrote a little piece about him for the website, because the interesting thing is I had a guy offer me Ronald Jones in a 1 QB league for Dwayne Haskins. I was like, oh, well, that's fairly instant accept because, well, he's my third quarterback on my taxi squad that I don't even like. But right. So I dug into him a little bit more. And I mean, he averaged like 4.2 yards per carry. He had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. I mean, like all the numbers, I was like, oh, well, I'm surprised. I really didn't see him that way because I never had a Rojo share in 2019. Mm-hmm. So I'm on the bandwagon with you, Addison. I think it's definitely a good buy low because people are selling him for, pennies on the dollar at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Taylor?
I kept the Bucks train going actually. So I put Otarius Jabari Howard, also known as OJ Howard. So he's I guess you know him as OJ. I call him Otarius, but anyways, he's obviously had a disappointing last season or two. There's a lot of excitement around him after his rookie season, flashing. Last year seemed like he made progress. I think he only played 10 games 2 years ago, and then last year was a little bit rough for him. Seemed like he was in Arians' doghouse for the majority of the season for whatever reason. But if you actually look at his game logs, I mean, he's playing between 75 and 90% of the offensive snaps every game. So he's lacking there in targets a little bit. I think in 6 out of his 14 games he played last year, he had 5 targets, which granted isn't, a major amount. But it's something to work off of. I'm also curious as to whether a change in quarterback, so if Winston's out and you bring in somebody that's more of a dink and dunker type of guy, whether he will see some more opportunities over the middle of the field, short to intermediate range as well. Because as you know, Winston likes to air it out to Godwin and Evans 20-plus times a game to those two. I think Howard kind of just became a forgotten piece. He's pretty cheap. Guys that drafted him in 2017, I guess 2017 is when he came out, they're probably somewhat frustrated with him. So I think you can get him for a pretty low price and then just bet on the talent. And, as a young tight end, hope he develops in year 4 here.
Yeah, for me, the problem is you talk about the snap counts, but this dude is such a good blocker. That's the reason why his snap counts are so high. And they just didn't use the tight end very much last year. I'm hoping he gets traded with all the rumors going around that he could possibly be traded. I think that would be the best scenario is that if he can get out of Tampa Bay, Arians, all the talk before the season was Arians has never really used the tight end. And then you wonder before last season, when he's got a skilled guy, is he going to use him? Because, this isn't Jermaine Gresham or something from Arizona. This is O.J. Howard, who is an elite talent, but then it just didn't happen. So I hope he gets out of town, but then I think he could create some great value at his current price. So I'm on board with that one. Any other thoughts on O.J. Howard? Nope.
Yeah.
Brad, who is your first?
Well, it was Ronald Jones, but I'll go to my second one. Preston Williams from Miami. And it's more so because he was their best receiver up until he got injured. He was outscoring and outplaying and out snapping Devontae Parker. And with the amount of needs Miami has this year and what they're probably going to do in the draft, I think they probably go into this season, with a Albert Wilson, Preston Williams, Devontae Parker kind of mix. And I'm sure they'll bring somebody in, but probably not put a lot of investment into somebody. So, I think he's a guy you can get on the cheap and, just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, and they're moving Mike Gesicki into the big slot role too, apparently from tight end. So that's going to be interesting to see how his value goes if he changes from tight end to wide receiver. How that's all going to work out. That'll be an interesting thing this offseason. My first guy is not going to be a surprise. I think I've tweeted out like 9 times this offseason that Allen Robinson is just grossly undervalued, and I mean, I think he's going in the right in the top half of the 4th round in a lot of mocks, and this is a guy that was wide receiver 8 last year with the worst quarterback in the NFL. But it wasn't like, when he had his big season in Jacksonville and, Bortles wasn't good, but they were trailing like bad all the time. The Bears were always close in games, so it wasn't like it was a lot of garbage time all the time, like that 1,400-yard, 14 touchdown season. He's only 26, which just seems weird because it feels like he's been in the league forever. But got the legs back under him and finished as the wide receiver 8, and now he's going pick right around pick 40, and I just think that's way too low. I think this is a guy that's probably a top 26 dynasty asset in one QB leagues. So I think that if you can get him for that price, then he is a guy that can help you win championships going forward, especially if the quarterback play improves at all.
So I had Allen Robinson as as one of my my buy highs, which is funny. Because and only because like I 100% agree with you in the fact that he's completely like undervalued right now, especially for a guy coming off of a top 10 season at wide receiver. And so like the reason why I had him as a buy high is not because you need to sell another top 10 wide receiver to get him, but I am very much willing to overpay for Allen Robinson to get him because he still is entering the prime of his career. He's been in the league for like 6 years, but he's like 26. And, I think even if Mitch Trubisky is still the quarterback in Chicago in 2020, or if they grab another guy, I don't think anybody's going to be worse than Mitch Trubisky, to be honest with you. But even if it still is Trubisky, it should be another fantastic year for A-Rob like it was last year. I don't really see anything changing, especially with Taylor Gabriel, not on the team anymore. It's possible that he receives even more targets and just does more with those targets as well too.
So what are you? Well, I guess either one of you. What are you guys willing to pay if we just talk rookie picks wise for Allen Robinson?
103.
Yeah, somewhere early for okay.
I mean, I would honestly probably rather have A-Rob than any of the rookies, but when you're looking at the rookie value that you're going to get, especially as we get closer to the draft, like it would be a bad trade to trade the 101 or the 102 for him because you could probably get more because of rookie hype and everything like that. I would probably rather have him. He's a proven player. He's still only 26, and I know I can win championships with him. And he's probably not going to be your wide receiver 1 on your fantasy team, but could very well return wide receiver 1 numbers for you. So it's that weird spot until we get to draft season, closer to drafts, where we really see what people are willing to pay for the 101 and the 102. But I would have to agree. I think 103 right now, I would feel comfortable giving 104. But just on a value standpoint, even though I would rather have him than those players, I wouldn't trade those top 2 picks for him. I think you get people to overpay for those. Maybe get Allen Robinson plus for those picks, and then you really win.
Our boy Paul says the 105. He'd rather any of the big 4 running backs.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Before we know landing spot or no?
Well, Paul's in our chat tonight, so yeah, it's before landing spot, at least for him.
Yeah.
All right. So we are back to Addison for his buy number 2. Who you got?
My other buy right now is a player that I actually just wrote up an article on later last week, and that's Curtis Samuel, the other wide receiver in Carolina. A lot of people have been super high on DJ Moore to the point where he's like a top 5 dynasty wide receiver right now, which, I mean, I think that's a little high. I understand why, but to me, Curtis Samuel is extremely undervalued. According to DLF ADP, he's the wide receiver 43 right now, which I think is super insane considering the fact that last season was probably the worst season for any wide receiver on the face of the planet ever, just because it was horrendous. Like, Kyle Allen was awful for any wide receiver, especially a deep threat wide receiver like Curtis Samuel. I mentioned in this article about how Kyle Allen last year, according to Pro Football Focus, was the worst deep ball passer in the league with a deep ball completion percentage at 29.6%. And that deep ball is anything over 20 yards. So, oh my gosh. So I just knocked over a Funko Pop. I feel so bad. I'm sorry.
James.
As long as the computer stays on.
The computer's all right. So we're good there.
Before you go any further, did you see the stat? I seen this on Twitter the other day that over 40% of the passes that were thrown to Curtis Samuel were deemed non-catchable.
Yes, I did see that one.
That is nuts.
Yeah. It's honestly insane. And when you think about, assuming that Cam Newton comes back, or even if it's a rookie quarterback or whatever the Panthers are doing, they have to be better than Kyle Allen. Like, Curtis Samuel was just so unlucky with the inaccurate passes coming his way and just the inability to really get anything going. And that's why when you see, he had over 100 targets last year, but he only had 50 receptions. And when you look at his game log, like he has games where, he was targeted 6, 7, 8 times, but only had 2 or 3 receptions on those targets and for like another 30 yards. And then maybe his good games were the ones where he actually scored a touchdown. It's just was super unlucky for him. And I think that he has the potential to be a top 20 wide receiver if he even clicks on like 50% of the balls that were missed, just completely inaccurate towards him last year. And Cam Newton is a much better deep ball passer than Kyle Allen. I say much better only because Kyle Allen was so bad, but like Cam's not even that great, but he's better. And I just think that, he's going to connect a lot more with a different quarterback on those deep ball passes. And we know how valuable those air yards and the opportunities to have those deep balls are for wide receivers. And I truly believe that he has as much potential as DJ Moore does to really break out in a Matt Rule Carolina Panthers offense under Cam Newton or a new quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a guy that I almost put as a buy low as well for many of those same reasons. I've seen those same stats. Someone did I forget because I like favorite all these tweets and then they get buried in my favorited tweets, but I have one somewhere in there that was like a montage of all of the missed deep balls to Curtis Samuel. And like you said, if he hits on half of those, how many of them turn into long touchdowns? And long touchdowns are 8 fantasy points if it's I guess it could be more than 8 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points if it's a 40-yard touchdown or something like that. So,
yeah, I actually had him in my breakout article and video last year, and obviously the quarterback play ruined that, made me look like an idiot. So I'll just tell people I was a year ahead when this one happens. Taylor.
Yeah, I came with an unpopular second one, but my Bengals fandom came out in me here. So hear me out on the reasonings before you groan. Mr. John Ross. Remember, the segment is buy low, and I think he can be had for very low. So can he stay healthy? Probably not. But he will produce while he is healthy for the most part. I kind of equate him to like a Will Fuller with less track record of production. Because as we know, Will Fuller always puts up these boom-bust games for 10, 11, 12 games a year and gets injured for soft tissue for 3 or 4 games, something like that. John Ross has also had the injury bug since he came into the NFL. But he did flash last year in a bad offense with Andy Dalton, who, as a lifelong Bengals fan, also struggles with deep ball accuracy, to say the least. And he, especially, I think, the first game of the season against Seattle, he had a breakout game. He had another game, maybe the game 3 of the season or something like that, where he had some big production. I think he's a boom-bust option. He's not somebody I want to be relying in and week out. But I think he can be someone that is a wide receiver 3 range type of guy that has the upside to produce those wide receiver 2 type weeks. So if you're in a deep league or can start multiple flex spots, plugging him in as my 4th wide receiver option, I'm cool with. And I think with a new quarterback coming in, I'm super high on Joe Burrow, especially from a deep ball accuracy standpoint. I know he doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's extremely accurate getting it to his receivers. And there were a lot of times where John Ross is slowing up to catch the ball from Andy Dalton. It's getting broken up or he's getting tackled as soon as he catches it. And again, kind of similar to Curtis Samuel, if he turns a couple of those into touchdowns, he's producing some pretty productive weeks. So I don't know exactly what the price is right now to buy him. I think, though, the injury-prone label could knock him down to, could you get him for a 3rd-round rookie pick maybe? Extremely late 2nd round would probably be the highest I'd be comfortable buying him for. But you've got to find an owner that's frustrated with him for his injuries, and then, again, set your expectations that you're not banking on him to produce super solid fantasy numbers every single week. Who day?
I mean, I've always been really low on Ross, but at his price, I can't argue with, taking a shot on him, and, possibly being able to throw him in there as a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, depending on how deep your leagues are. So, you won't get much argument from me there.
Yeah, the chat seems to be pretty torn on it. Some think you're terrible, and
I can live with that.
Some like his speed. So, I don't know. Ross is kind of one of those guys I wouldn't spend much on, but if somebody's going to give him to me, then maybe I'll take him.
The OG Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It'd be interesting though, because I mean, I realize he's lower in the pecking order. If AJ Green comes back, you've got Boyd, you've got Mixon, who's a key part of that offense. But if AJ Green doesn't come back and they draft a rookie and he's competing with Boyd and a rookie and Mixon out of the backfield, that's my lovely wife. Then
we didn't even believe she was real until just now.
She's real. There she is. That's her. I just think, there's potential there for him to be productive for however many games he ends up playing.
Well, the one thing you can't argue with is that he has had a propensity of finding the end zone when healthy.
Yeah,
like his touchdown rate has been high.
It was actually surprising too. I think last year is where we really saw a little bit the year before too, before he got injured, how much the Bengals were actually targeting him in the end zone, which is unusual because he's not a huge wide receiver. But as you mentioned, he's just got a nose for the football there, especially once you get near the end zone. So it would be a dart I'd be willing to throw for the right price.
Brad, number 2, who you got? Don't snipe me.
Well, I had to scramble because my Ronald Jones was taken by our boy Addison. So I'm going to go. I don't know that this is necessarily a buy low, but a guy that just doesn't get a lot of love that probably needs to. And I'm going to go Robert Woods from the Rams. The last 2 seasons, the guy's averaged over 130 targets. He's averaged over, 1,100 yards. I mean, he's always healthy and always going and seems to be loved there in LA. I think I've not seen a lot of trades go down with him recently. I have seen a few people offer him to me, but I just didn't bite. So I think he's a guy that, if you're looking for consistent, he's only 27. You're going to get a few more good years out of him. So guy that I like, I think could be a good buy low candidate. What say you, Taylor?
Yeah, well, I think I'm agreeing with the Robert Woods thing. So a lot of people are going to talk up Cooper Cup for the right reasons. I've got him pretty high in my dynasty rankings. But with Brandon Cooks' injury history, which is just absolutely terrifying that he's one hit away from being out of the NFL, I think having Robert Woods, firmly as the wide receiver 2 in that offense, which I would expect. I mean, they were bad offensive line wise, but it wasn't a terrible defense or offense last year. They put up some pretty big games from time to time. I think he's pretty undervalued, and like you said, I don't know exactly what the price would be because I haven't seen a ton of trades with him go down. But he'd be someone I'd be extremely comfortable throwing into my wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 even spot every week in my lineup.
Especially because right now, most of the places that I've seen his value at, he's kind of like in the wide receiver, back in wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 range, and that's good value for a guy who's that consistent.
Mm-hmm.
By you, Rick?
Yeah, I don't have any arguments with Robert Woods. I want to know what Addison was thinking because he kind of, I don't know if he was clapping for it or what when he was first announced, but it seemed like he wanted to say something when Robert Woods came out of your mouth.
I love Robert Woods. I love Robert Woods a lot. I think that he would be my Rams player to target if I was looking to acquire a piece of that offense. I would rather have Robert Woods than Cooper Kupp at both of their values. And I just, Robert Woods is one of those guys. He's in the tier of guys like Jarvis Landry or Julian Edelman where they're just like perennially undervalued, but they're so productive and they're just always going to be there in the top 15, top 18. Robert Woods was he was a wide receiver 1 in some leagues, depending on your scoring, and he's just always going to be there catching 6, 7, 8 passes for like 80 yards, and that's good enough in PPR leagues. And if he happens to score a touchdown, you got a 20+ point performance out of him that week. And I just, I love Robert Woods. I don't think there's anything more that I could possibly say that you guys haven't already said. He's just so consistent and so good on a yearly basis, and then always undervalued. It's easy. It's really easy.
Yeah, you guys definitely said everything. Before I get into my second player, if you're out there watching on either platform, drop a player that you think is a buy low, and we're gonna touch on a couple of them afterwards. But mine, and this is probably bad because neither of the guys that I said are like super low, or but Kenyon Drake, how is he running back 26 off the board right now? It doesn't make any sense to me. He was running back 14 2 years ago on less than 11 touches per game. All he's done is produce with touches. People are worried because they don't know if he's going to stay in Arizona or not, but the only way he doesn't stay in Arizona is if somebody pays him, and if they pay him, they're going to use him for more than 11 touches, and we already seen he can get you high running back 2 value there. I just don't see how at running back 26 this guy doesn't get you value over the next couple years. I think that Arizona is going to do everything they can to keep him there. We've seen him go over there from a very bad Miami offense to Arizona, which wasn't really a great offense, and definitely not when it came to scoring because they were really bad in the red zone. But this dude was running back 6 after the trade and just put up monster numbers against San Francisco for 2 games and Tampa Bay for another one, and Pittsburgh for another one, teams that were good against the run, and this dude still balled out. So I just don't see how running back 26 just seems way too low for me on Kenyon Drake right now, a guy that's got top 8 upside probably for full season, and you can get him for like a late 5th, 6th round pick. So he would be my second guy. Any
Well
thoughts?
said.
Anybody?
Well, I'm not a huge Drake guy, but I mean, I guess if he's sitting at RB 26 range, you could do a lot worse. I feel like as I was doing my dynasty rankings, kind of revamped this past weekend. I don't know. I feel like after like around 15, 16, 17 range, it gets super muddy. So you throw some of the rookies in there, and then you're into like, I don't know, like the Damian Williams, Devontae Freemans, and Darius Geis and Kareem Hunts, and it's like everyone's got question marks. I mean, I would like Drake ahead of all of those guys. I don't know, like if I'm thinking about the big four incoming rookies, um, I don't know if I'd want Drake over any of them right now. So I guess if you're saying 101 through 104, I'm thinking like what I would pay for him. I don't know that I would pay a first for him personally if it came to rookie picks, but I would give a second for him. But that's just me being a little bit lower on him personally. I mean, he got his opportunity in Arizona and it worked out, but I don't know if he doesn't return back to that system. I don't
He
know.
was he was
I haven't
he
seen
was
enough production.
RB 14 in Miami on a bad offense
Yeah,
the year before with less than 11 touches per game.
that's
All he's
great.
done is balled
Can't
out when
buy
he
him. I
touches the
can't
ball.
buy him.
That's my Drake love. I've been pumping him up for 3 years now, so I figured somebody would disagree with me on Drake.
I don't strongly disagree. I just don't feel strongly in support of him. Is all. So
And I do have some buys from our community chat, Rick. Whenever you want me to throw them in, I can chuck those names over at you.
Yeah. If nobody else wants to tell me how wrong I am, I'm happy to move on.
No, I mean, I don't mind Kenyon Drake. Like, I would love to see him go somewhere, kind of like Duke Johnson last year. I would love to see Kenyon Drake go to like Houston or somewhere that
yeah,
could
because Duke
utilize
really
him.
showed out there
Duke,
in Houston.
well,
That
but
was not
Drake's
a good
better than.
comparison.
Well, well, you and I both talked last year about, oh man, it'll be great seeing somebody that is a good running back go to Houston. I mean, and unfortunately, Duke Johnson just didn't show up. But like a guy like Kenyon Drake going to a system like that or going back to Arizona, I mean, that he provides a lot of value that I'm willing to pay a back end of the first, early second for. I mean, I'm not afraid of it, you know. Um,
That's
if I
so
need running
rich.
back help, you know, I'm not spending an arm and a leg to try to get one of these rookie running backs because rookie picks are insanely expensive right now. Why not take a back into the first round or get Kenyon Drake and something else and then, you know, take my shot there? But, you know, whatever. I mean, if you like him, you like him. He's kind of always been one of those guys that you either love him or you hate him. And it's okay.
I'll give you a better comp for him. It would be Aaron Jones. Would be a better comp for Kenyon Drake. I think is just a guy who's so good and so explosive, but just needs touches and just needs, volume to be good. And that's always going to be Kenyon Drake's problem. It's always going to be Aaron Jones's problem. Duke Johnson is another great example of a guy who really just needs touches, but like he just needs to be on the field first of all. And that would be. I'm a Duke Johnson fan as well too. Yeah, I do think that I would rather have Kenyon Drake than any of the other running backs outside the top, at least the top four. I'd like to see where Edwards-Helaire goes as well too. Like if he ends up landing in like Atlanta or something like that, like that's a completely different story. But at least definitely Kenyon Drake over guys like AJ Dillon or Keyshawn Vaughn or anything like that. And just hope that he re-signs in Arizona and that they just decide to use him more than they do David Johnson, who they can get out of his contract next year. So if they sign Kenyon Drake to like a 3-year deal, and then they can get out of David Johnson's contract next year, and Kenyon Drake's the guy, he's definitely going to be taken near RB1 territory if he's taken if he is the guy in Arizona. Just with that offense's propensity for scoring and their how quick that they play. So,
Yeah.
Who were you? Sorry, Brad. You said you had buys on the.
I've got Brad. Give us one from Facebook, and then I got one from YouTube.
Facebook. Brian over in our Facebook community brought up Paris Campbell, just because he was so underwhelming, and he's got a lot of upside there in Indy, especially with T.Y. Hilton on the other side, and if they do a QB change. He thinks it would open up even more value for him.
Let's go on.
Any thoughts on him? Anything else? No.
Yeah. No, well, not from the responder. I mean, I've never been a huge Paris Campbell guy, but
I liked him before Andrew Luck retired. And then now it depends
Yep.
on who lands there. I mean, if Phillip Rivers lands there, he has a 1 to 2 year shot of having some value there, depending on who they bring in after. But if they don't bring in one of those gunslinger quarterbacks, then Campbell has less value for me.
I gotta get Swag Kelly some reps. That's my boy.
Isn't he
That's my
gone?
boy. I have
Somebody
I
on
have
YouTube said, "Who the fuck is Paris Campbell?" Uh, he's a wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. Okay, CXK over on YouTube said David Montgomery is my buy low candidate. And everybody already knows I'm a Bears fan, so I will let other people speak on David Montgomery. Addison, what is your thought?
No, I can't do it. Can't buy into it. I just he's not gonna get quality touches in terms of like targets and receptions, and I think he's much more Sony Michel than a three down back guy that you would like to see him actually become. Not like an Ezekiel Elliott or Saquon Barkley type, but like I just can't get on board with David Montgomery, and even with how low his price is, probably after a disappointing season last year, I just still can't get on board with it. And I'd rather have guys who are gonna receive the ball and get points through receptions than guys who are just gonna get maybe 12 or 14 carries on the ground every now and then whenever Matt Nagy feels like it. And I can't get on board with that.
I love Montgomery. I hate Chicago. They're wasting such a talented running back.
I think
But
the
yeah,
other
you're
thing
right.
is
Won't
it's
get
tough.
any touches.
I think the thing that's tough with 2018 rookies is whoever drafted him in the first round, so they're not going to want to bail on him after 1 year for significantly less than they paid, even though he's probably not worth a first anymore. I mean, when I did the 2019, 2020 rookie blended rankings or whatever, he didn't crack the top 24. I had him like around like 28 to 30-ish range. So I think with the influx of talent coming in, you can make a face, Rick. I'm all right with it.
You're going to be surprised by my take, but I mean, I still think that's pretty damn low, but
I'd love to talk that with you later. But no, I mean, I think just the touches are going to be tough to come by that aren't kind of game script dependent sort of running back, where you saw Sony Michel when it was a great game for him and he could get 20 carries, he could convert that to 90 yards and hopefully fall into the end zone. And I'm just worried about David Montgomery's opportunities.
as a Bears fan, Matt Nagy just completely pissed me off last year. I mean, just to be completely honest, because just starting from week one, we're in a one score game with the Packers, and the whole team, we ran the ball 12 times, and 4 of them were Cordarrelle Patterson. Like, the game calling last year was horrible. Montgomery is one of those guys that gets better as he gets more touches. Gets them legs rolling, wears down the defense, and they just, I don't know. It was very frustrating last year, and I don't trust Nagy. So while I was very high on David Montgomery a year ago, now because of Nagy, even though I like the player and I like the skill set, he can catch the ball. They just didn't utilize him that way. I I have a hard time going out and seeking him out. If I was going to seek out some other players in that area, I mean, literally, what did I see? Looking at DLF's old trusty, I don't think he was far off. Where's he at? Where'd he go? He really fell. um, there's just other options that I trust more. Um, I can't. Oh, there he is, 63. I mean, he's ahead of Drake. Like, I would rather have Kenyon Drake, who's going 68th overall or 69th overall, to David Montgomery 63rd
Nice.
overall. So, that's one of the reasons why Kenyon Drake's a buy low. Okay, so sells. We gotta get on to our sells. Addison, who is your first sell?
Oh, I'm ready to make people mad if this is for it. Oh, this is my favorite thing to talk about. I love talking about how much of a sell high Derrick Henry is. It is
Yes,
my favorite thing to do.
you're my
It
new
is my
co-host.
favorite thing to do.
Every Tuesday, 9 o'clock. Brad's fired.
Let- Listen,
I brought
I
my A game
mean,
for this nonsense. Oh, actually, I don't care. Sell them all.
This makes me happy. Go ahead, Addison. Sorry.
no, you're good. Since 2000, there have only been 12 instances where a running back has finished as an RB1 with less than 20 receptions. Derrick Henry is one of those 12 from 2019, and his 2019 season was just so inflated by the touchdowns. He had 16 rushing touchdowns, another two receiving touchdowns, and I really don't see how that is at all repeatable. 303 carries, 1,540 yards. I'm not on board with that, especially if he's going to be going as a top 5 running back. And there's just so many other options out there that I would rather have guys who are going to catch the ball. I would place more trust in a guy like Nick Chubb, who, even if they bring back Kareem Hunt and he's not going to get receiving volume, I still believe that, Nick Chubb is going to have a better season than Derrick Henry. And I really cannot understand why everybody gets so crazy over him at all. And he's just going to regress really, really hard, in my opinion. And without any receiving workload at all, it's going to be pretty bad in 2020 if he does drop down by about like 300 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns. Even at with that kind of numbers, he won't be an RB1 at all. So
If he doesn't return to Tennessee, is there any other situation he goes to where you think he is less of a sell? You're maybe more intrigued about holding him, or are you just all out sell no matter where?
No, I think I'm all out selling him. I mean, there's not really a lot of teams that really need a running back. First of all, this is also a problem that I have with this running back class as well too. Like, there are 4, potentially 5 running backs coming into this class that are going to need homes, as well as guys like Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, Melvin Gordon, and it's just there's a lot of running backs out there and not a lot of teams that really need a running back. So I think that Tennessee would be the best spot for Derrick Henry. It just would make sense. And, for him to have to go to another offense, learn a whole new, team with new teammates, a new coach, a new offense, do all that stuff. I just think that would be even worse for a guy like Derrick Henry, even if he might get more receiving workload on a team like Atlanta or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But, I really don't see where he's going to get the same type of volume. And, it's just, I'm not on board with him at all in any capacity.
And that kind of goes back to the thread that Michael Liu had. Yes, was that yesterday where he went through potential landing spots for teams? I don't know if you saw that, Addison.
I did.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to that of like how many teams actually need running backs. We've got this crop of free agents, and you've got some very talented rookies coming in. Somebody's not going to get the role that we think they're going to get potentially. So he's interesting if he doesn't return to Tennessee, what his role looks like too.
We've got another class coming in next year that's already got a few guys that people liked in this class before they dropped out and stayed in, or I guess dropped out sounds wrong because they stayed in school. But there's going to be a lot more committees than people are anticipating. So I'm definitely agreeing with you guys there. But I love the sell Derrick Henry. Get out. I liked him as a sell when he was a 4th-round startup pick. And and yeah,
I was
I mean,
with you on that too.
he completely annihilated that because of the almost 1,600 yards rushing and the amount of touchdowns. But still, a guy that scored that many touchdowns, like when I mapped out all the touches, he still gets stuffed an enormous amount of times, and a big portion of his overall production comes from his top 10% of his runs. So if he loses those big plays, his value drops enormously. And
But Rick, have you seen him standing next to Mark Ingram in college?
I don't. I mean, that dude is gonna make a lot of people look small. But
Ugh.
I mean, I agree because I talked about it. Him and Jacobs both. Um, Josh Jacobs, neither of them caught the ball. I think, well, one of them caught the ball 20 times and the other one was like 18 or whatever it was. But you can't stick with running back one production without catching the ball 30 to a minimum 30 to 35 times a year. Henry's never going to do that. Jacobs might be able to do that, and that's the talk. But it's just there's no way he sustains this value. There's absolutely no way. Um, get out now and smile next year. So
I guess
you took my first sell for sure.
The perks of going first.
Brad.
I got nothing to say about it other than he helped me beat you to get to a championship
Shut
in our
up.
Superflex.
Get to your
Whatever.
sell.
That's the only share I have of him, and that's the only
Brashad
one.
Perriman was the one that beat me. That's garbage. Go
That
ahead.
was pretty hilarious.
Give
I
your
pulled him off the
sell.
junk heap. All right, so I want to preface my sells with saying I really want to open up a conversation and say, what is the age that you really start to consider, or is there an age where you start to consider moving a couple guys? So my first sell is Tyler Lockett. I've never been a Tyler Lockett guy. Last year, I know he had the most targets he's ever had at like 110 targets, but normally he only averages around 70 targets. And, with the emergence of DK Metcalf, I just don't see him keeping that target share. Greg Olson's now there. There's a lot of different options for them. But, I saw that the two guys I have as sells were both at like 27. So do you guys consider at a certain age starting to think about when the guy's going to move off your team, or is it just, when you feel like the urge to move a guy? So I have two questions, So what do you think about Tyler Lockett? And then is there an age where you guys start to consider the shelf life is at the high end, you need to get rid of him? Taylor?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I struggle with the age part. I feel like I used to be like a ageist, but then we've just seen a lot of these guys continue to produce, especially the elite talent. So like if you look at like a Julio Jones, I'm like, I don't know if he's gonna fall off a cliff. He might just be really good until he retires. I know he's a freak, and that's not the norm, but I'm a little hesitant to stick a number to a receiver that I'm looking to sell. I mean, I think if you look at what their strengths are, you would assume that the speedier guys, as they get older, if they rely so much on their speed, maybe they'd be sells. But then you have guys like this is gonna be a bad example, so excuse me, but like you got guys like Ted Ginn, who he's not fantasy relevant, but like he's still been an extremely useful NFL player later into his career, relying on speed. So they don't all lose their speed. I mean, I think I look more at like how do they win usually? Is it route running and technique? Is it bullying people? Is it, what's their style? And then their situation, is there anything there major that's going to be changing soon? So I don't typically, for wide receivers, look at age as much as I do with running backs. Also, Lockett, I would sell him as well because DK is on my list later on.
Addison, what do you think? And about the age topic, I'm interested to hear what you guys say.
So for the age thing, it for me, for wide receivers, it's really not as important as it is for running backs, and especially whenever you get to ages like 26, 27, 28, those are the peak years traditionally for wide receivers in the league. And so, I mean, I get the argument that, if you sell 1 year early, it's better than to sell 1 year late, right? Especially whenever you consider all these guys as they're getting older, guys like Adam Thielen, who you can't sell for like a ham sandwich, even though he's like a wide receiver one, but it's because he's 28, 29 years old. That's why, and these other guys are starting to get up there. Like Julio has never been valued correctly for the past like 3 years because he just hit 30. And so that, to me, like, while they're still producing, I would still be fine with keeping them on my team as they're producing. There is something to be said about their value getting dropped because of their age, but with a guy like Tyler Lockett and to move into him specifically, I think he is going to be a 1A, 1B type situation with DK Metcalf. I don't really think his target share is going to be all that affected, especially by like Greg Olsen or Will Disley coming back, I think that offense is going to be so hyper funneled between DK and Lockett, and Russell Wilson is just going to be able to, you know, throw the ball his 30 times a game or 25 times a game because Schottenheimer loves to run it so much. But the weapons that he has is going to be those two guys. And to me, I think it's going to be very reminiscent of how like the 2018 Pittsburgh Steelers were, where if you look at the final end of season target shares for that entire team, it was literally AB and Juju got like 50% of the target share each, and then like everybody else had like less than 70 targets, and that's kind of how I think it's going to end up being, just on a smaller scale because the team throws a lot less. But I think that Lockett is going to be fine. If you can move him for another receiver that's younger, I could understand that. Maybe a guy like Michael Gallup or DJ Chark or somebody like that who's kind of similar but younger. I can understand that, but I'm not like actively looking to sell Tyler Lockett if I have him. I'll definitely field offers for him and see what I can get. But he's not like a major sell high to me. Like I have to get him off my team.
Yeah, I'm more in line with that. I just think Russell Wilson is so efficient that you don't have to have the super high volume of targets to have value in that offense as a receiver. And I do agree that while Olsen may get some red zone looks, he's not going to pull that many targets away. And we've also seen them throwing the ball a little bit more each year, um, as as Wilson's career has progressed, and that running game, if they can't keep anybody healthy, then I mean, they were signing Marshawn Lynch last year, and just in a real bad spot running the ball. So I like both of those receivers there in Seattle. The age thing for me, I think it really depends on where your team's at, because you can see where these older receivers around age 29, 30 start losing their value. I think you really got to look at your team and say, okay, where am I at, and try to get ahead of that if you're not in competition. Um, but obviously, winning championships is the best thing. So keeping them and winning is good if you can do that. But no matter what, they're going to lose value when they hit around that age. So if I look at my teams objectively and I'm not in competition, I don't feel like I am, then I'm going to try to get out that year early, so that I can get as much value out of them as possible. Because you're right, last offseason in one league, I tried to move Thielen. I could not get anybody to pay anything for him. And he was coming off of a monster season. The second half was obviously a little bit shaky, but now like it's like impossible to move him, even though he could come out and be a wide receiver one again next year, just because of that age number. So I think it's a real tricky thing with wide receivers. Running backs, I'm much more willing to lose a year or two of value just because they can hit that wall and be done immediately.
David Johnson.
David freaking Johnson. Um. Okay, so my first sell. This one was
Drum roll.
do what?
I said drum roll. You were building the suspense there.
Well,
Pause for dramatic effect.
well, Derrick Henry was my first one, and I really wanted to be the one to throw him under the bus again, but Addison beat me to it. But I think that AJ Brown, it's so many, like I love the big plays. Um, Tannehill was like super efficient, but there's just a lot of guys that are going behind him that have done a lot more than half of a season of production. And as a guy going in the top 2 rounds of a startup, um, I feel like you could sell now, and he's probably still going to be, you know, a fourth rounder at worst, probably fifth rounder. I just feel like at top 24 pick overall, he is too high.
What you need to say is because you love Corey
It
Davis.
has nothing to do with Corey Davis. It has to
Dude,
do
I
with
almost put
so much of his
conversation.
production being big plays. And then Tannehill just, I mean, last year at this time, if we would have said Tannehill would have the highest yards per target in the league, would you have called me crazy if I said that? I mean, that's what we had, and AJ Brown had so many big plays. I think he's going to be good. I just think that right now you could capitalize on his value, and then potentially a year from now buy him back for you know maybe three quarters to his dollar.
Yeah, that was kind of what sparked that article that I wrote a couple months ago because the AJ Brown hype was ridiculous. Kind of heading into the NFL playoffs, he cooled off a little bit, and I think they played 3 games. The Titans did once they got to the postseason. But his end of regular season, he's tearing up the competition, and his value is just skyrocketing. So I saw like a ton of AJ Brown Twitter polls that were just bonkers. And so that's where it kind of inspired me to write the Juju Smith Schuster being AJ Brown before AJ Brown. And I, as part of the, oh no.
No. He's like, wait a minute, I think my computer's rebooting again.
No. Sorry, guys, I gotta go. I'm a Steelers fan. I just
wait. So what's wrong?
You just brought up Juju, and it makes me really sad.
No,
I was really high on him.
No, I'm really high on Juju. My point is that people were saying easily AJ Brown over Juju because of all the production he put his rookie year, and Juju already did that his rookie year as a 21-year-old or whatever. And so I think that some of those things you mentioned, Rick, those factors that were like ridiculous efficiency from his quarterback, and I don't think these things will necessarily go away because he's a great player, but AJ Brown had so many plays where it was screens, reverses, slants, drags that end up going for 50 yards, which he's a good player. So I don't think that they will all go away, but they're all not going to go for touchdowns and huge gains every year. So I'd be probably looking at his stats wise to go down a little bit next year. And then, like you said, you could probably buy him back if you sold him for a premium this year.
So my only problem with the sell him now and buy him cheaper next year is that I don't think that's going to be able to happen because of how young he is and the hype. Even if he performs even 90%, 85% of what he did last year, I still think he's not going to go to a discount to where you're going to be able to, be happy with selling him now and then buying him back next year. And I think it's just as possible that his price increases as well, too. I pulled up while you guys were talking. Since 2000, there have been 11 wide receivers who finished with over 1,000 yards in their rookie year. Let me just read off the names here for you. And this is in order from most receiving yards to less. Anquan Bolden, Odell Beckham Jr., Michael Clayton, Michael Thomas, Amari Cooper, A.J. Green, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Marquise Colston, and then Kelvin Benjamin. So really only like 2 busts on that list, and then the rest of those guys have all been like perennial wide receiver ones in terms of dynasty value. So yeah. I just that's my only problem with the argument. I don't have a problem with the sell high part of it because I do agree that a lot of that stuff was slants and stuff that were taken to the house, but that's also stuff that we saw Odell Beckham Jr. doing at the beginning of his career with Eli Manning, and just that's just how good he is, and I don't think, like you said, that's really going to go away. But that was a lot of his production. But he did do that, to his credit. He basically did all this production in the second half of the year, and he was on this list of 11 other wide receivers. He has the least amount of receptions that he did this on with 52. The next least amount of receptions were 65 with AJ Green and then 68 with Mike Evans. So, if his targets and his receptions go up, I do believe that, while the yards per reception is going to drop, that it's going to mitigate that with his receptions going up, so
That's fair.
That's where I'm at with AJ Brown. I just think it's going to be hard to do the whole trade now, buy back cheaper
Oh,
next year.
that's definitely not what I'm saying to do. I'm just saying that I think there's a lot of wide receivers in that range where he's at that I could see jumping him this season, because you've got Cortland Sutton right behind him, Kenny Galladay, who did it with terrible quarterbacks, Keenan Allen still down there. There's all the rookie wide receivers that could jump him if he doesn't have a great year. So that's just my thinking, is that his value right now is probably at a peak. Now, if he does come out and do that for a full season, but we also don't know who his quarterback's going to be. Um, what about Tom Brady? What if Tom Brady does go to Tennessee?
AJ Brown becomes N'Keal Harry.
No, I'm not saying that, because I thought AJ Brown last year was going way too low in rookie drafts. I just think that his value jumped too much. So, but we better move on to the next one.
Yes, I did.
That took a really long time on AJ Brown. So, Taylor.
Yeah, I'll go short and sweet. So my first sell high is someone we talked about earlier, Aaron Jones. I like the player. So Rick, as you know well, I hated Aaron Jones. I don't really know why. I then read the article last summer. I was like, oh, I actually like Aaron Jones. Once I actually looked at some of his production, we just needed to free him, get him some touches. And I think we saw last year his touches went up, his production went up. What I'm concerned about is obviously the amount of touchdowns. They had 19 total touchdowns, 16 on the ground, I think. He was really propelled with 2 monster games as well, one of them being a 4-touchdown game, which also happened to be the week that Jamal Williams was out with injury. So we know that when Jamal Williams is healthy, he's going to get some amount of touches. And I'm also a little concerned with, I'll buy into a little bit of the coach speak with Matt LaFleur. When all the other coaches are pumping up their players at the combine, he's saying he wants to potentially add a 3rd running back to the mix. So I've got concerns about whether Aaron Jones is going to be able to return that type of production that he had this year. So if you can get somebody that's willing to pay a premium based on the overall RB2 from 2019, then I'm jumping on that. But he's also a player I'm fine keeping if he's my running back 2. And I can't get, I would say I wouldn't sell for less than like a mid-first this year. So if someone's saying I'll give you the 110, I'll hold on to him. And I'm fine holding on to him, because even if he doesn't return the same numbers as this year, I think he's going to return overall low-end RB1 numbers in 2020.
Addison, you look like you had a lot of opinions there.
Aaron Jones his situation makes me so sad. Aaron Jones was one of my claims to fame. I like to think I tweeted out he came out in 2017, right? Yeah. So I tweeted out in May that Aaron Jones was that draft's David Johnson. To which I got hate for it.
I think you had that tweet pinned for a while, didn't you?
I did for a while, yes. As he was getting successful, I had that tweet pinned. But yeah, it makes me so sad to think about how it's possible that LaFleur is not just going and giving him everything and all the production, despite what he saw last year. I do believe that Jamal Williams is going to have a nice role. I really hope they don't add a 3rd guy. Boy, does that suck to hear. Mm-hmm. But I am on board with selling him if people are looking at and seeing that he was the RB2 last year, and if they would like to buy into that, I would be okay selling Aaron Jones high. And he was actually on my short list for. I wrote a couple of names down for sell highs, and he made the list. Just because if you can sell him for that high of a value, I think it's going to be worth it, because I don't know. Without injury to Jamal Williams like it was last year, I don't know if he's ever going to do what he did again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same as you. It's kind of funny. I've been pumping Aaron Jones since his rookie year, and didn't look very smart for a couple of them because they just wouldn't give him touches. But in that same Kenyon Drake mold, all it was volume. If we knew it was obvious to me that if he got volume, he was going to be valuable. It was his least efficient year rushing, so I think some of the touchdown regression could come from a higher rushing efficiency because I think he was like a yard, like 1.3 yards lower than his average per carry his first couple years. But yeah, I also agree that at the price that he's at, if you can get out from under him and get out of that frustration and get value, I wouldn't really argue with it. Brad, what did you think about Aaron Jones?
I think it's a good. For me, the sell high is more so I don't believe in LaFleur long term as the coach of the team. You know, Jones got most of his love when they were ahead in games, and I think they'll kind of regress back a little bit more to the medium this year, as the rest of the NFC North isn't nearly going to suck as much as they did last year. So I agree with you guys. You know, I'm fine with selling him high, but he's a guy that I've always liked. So I mean, I would probably sentimentally keep him around at least another year and see if all the hubbub's true. But I didn't like Jamal Williams, and I don't like the Packers. So I only
Addison,
like Aaron Jones.
sell number two.
Yeah, my sell number two, I'm going to stick with the running back position here, and this one also makes me sad as a Penn State fan and alumni. I'm gonna go with Miles Sanders here, and the reason for that is because I just think he has been propped up so hard because of what he did at the end of last season, which was primarily because they had nobody else on the team. Specifically, when you look at the splits for Miles Sanders with and without Jordan Howard, I think it's quite possible that they even bring back Jordan Howard. Or if they don't, they're definitely, I think, going to be looking to add somebody to complement Miles Sanders and be able to have more of a power back type thing to Miles Sanders' receiving back. So, and I do believe that Sanders is going to be valuable, but I'm looking at, February DLF ADP, and Miles Sanders is being taken as the RB13, squashed right in between DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor. And
Ooh.
I would rather have either one of those two players or a guy right above him, Josh Jacobs or Leonard Fournette. There's just a lot of guys that I would be fine moving Miles Sanders for in a 1v1, or if you had to add like a kicker in to upgrade him, I'd be totally fine with that. And I do believe that Sanders is going to be a guy that you're going to be able to get next year much cheaper, because I do think that Peterson is looking for a committee. And even if Miles Sanders is leading that committee, he's not going to be doing the same amount of things that he did at the end of last season and getting the same amount of volume. So he's not going to be returning the same amount of production, and thus he's going to fall in value overall from this point now to this point next year.
Well, yeah, and the fact that they're going to upgrade the weapons at receiver, and I mean,
Right.
there's just a lot of things that scare you about his future value.
Even Boston Scott was productive in that offense at the end of the year because there was no wide receivers.
Yeah,
Tough.
I think he had 17 touches one week, or maybe more than that when Jordan Howard was out. But I think when we did that buy sell kind of panel that we did back in February, we had, is Miles Sanders going to be a top 10 back in 2020? It was a 3-3 split on whether he would or not. I had him I sold that idea as well. I would sell him as an asset if he's going to be valued as a top 10 the top 12 dynasty running back, just because of the committee concerns. And I think when Jordan Howard was healthy, that's what the offense that Doug Peterson wants to run. And Miles Sanders is getting about 11 touches a game. And I just don't think, no matter how efficient you are, you may be the best talent in that backfield, but on 11 to 13 touches a game, you're just not going to be able to return the value to be a crack the top 10 running backs. So if for some reason Doug Peterson changes his approach, I think Sanders has that talent to lead the backfield. I just don't think he's going to get the opportunity, which seems to be a theme in some of our conversation tonight.
Yeah, we are moving back into that RBBC territory that we were in the late 2000s to early 2010s, and then we had a complete void at running back talent for a long time, and now we've got the extra running back talent, and they're all going to eat into each other, and it's going to be tough to figure out some of those situations. Okay, Brad, number 2.
I'm going to forego my number 2 because we've got quite a few in the community that have put up sells that I want to make sure we bring up. I'm going to go with our boy Anthony
Well,
Leone.
save them for the end. Save them for the end. But
You
stay on
sure?
scope.
Okay. My second sell was going to be a wide receiver in the category of Lockett, just because the uncertainty in LA. I was going to go with Keenan Allen, because I've seen a few trades where guys are giving multiple early first round picks for him, and I would sell Keenan Allen for like a top 5 first this year and a top 5 first in 2021, mostly on the fact that I just don't know what the Chargers offense as a whole is doing. I mean, Keenan Allen's got a lot of production the last few years, but it's just been so up and down. I don't like Anthony Lynn and his system. I mean, there's just a lot of variables that concern me, and if people are going to overpay, I'll sell them. So that was kind of the reason that I was thinking Keenan Allen would be a nice sell high, because I've seen multiple trades where he's been getting multiple firsts, and I do that every day.
Addison, any thoughts on Keenan Allen?
Keenan Allen is another one of those guys in the Robert Woods, Jarvis Landry tier for me. And my problem with him as a sell high is I don't know what you're going to get for him realistically, because he is, in my opinion, slightly undervalued for the production that he gives as a wide receiver 1. He finished as, like you said, a wide receiver 6, a top 10 wide receiver last year. And, but his value is nowhere near that in my opinion. So I don't know if he's a sell high for me. I would be interested to see what you would be able to get for him, realistically. So that's why I'm kind of hesitant on that one.
Yeah, I would be really interested to see who's paying 2 first for him, because I haven't seen that either. And he would be one. He was almost my buy low before I picked Allen Robinson, because his production never, like, his value hasn't matched his production for like 3 years. Like, from an overall
He's still
standpoint.
injury prone.
Lacerated kidney. That's like the biggest fluke ever. All right. George Kittle is my second guy. And this isn't because I don't like George Kittle, but it's because, he's 19th overall right now in DLF ADP. I am the wait on tight end guy. I like getting my tight ends, preferably in rookie drafts, where I can get them for a much smaller price tag and then gain that value after a couple years. So I would rather kind of sacrifice that position and then get my tight ends cheap. So if I can get a wide receiver, potential wide receiver 1 at that spot, I would rather take that at 19th overall than a tight end, and that's any tight end, not just because it's George Kittle. So that would be my sell number 2.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, because I'm also typically like a wait on tight end, but I'm finding, so I am a Kittle owner in one of my leagues, and I can't, like, he's kind of like similar to Keenan Allen, and I cannot get the value for him that I think he's actually worth. So people, and it can be obviously league dependent on what your league mates, maybe none of them value tight ends, and that's the issue I'm running into. But I mean, when you're getting that positional advantage week in and week out with George Kittle and Travis Kelce type of guys, I'm not selling him short for less than what he should be getting as an elite asset at that position. And so that's the issue I've been having. I don't disagree with the idea. It's just like, do you think people are willing to give what he's worth, and what is he worth if you owned him already?
See, that's the difficult part for me, because I look, he's going before Leonard Fournette. Like, I would rather have Leonard Fournette than George Kittle. Odell Beckham.
But if you're in a league and you already own Kittle, do you think if you propose Kittle for Fournette that the Fournette guy's going to accept?
That part, I think in a lot of cases they would.
You think they'll take Kittle?
I think a lot of people would.
I was just curious.
No, I didn't know if you had any more. I answered your question. You said you do.
So my gears are turning because I'm like, I gotta get some trades out there for Kittle. Then looking at ADPs type of stuff. So
Yeah, I definitely think that a lot of people would. A lot of people wouldn't either. It might be 50-50 on who would take Kittle over Fournette, but I think that you're going to have enough success in offering that it's definitely worth a shot. Um, Anybody else have any thoughts on Kittle? No?
I just don't see him moving. I mean, it's hard with tight ends to really, because so many people do that wait and see approach or wait and take a guy later. So, I mean, if you can move him and get good value, sure, but I just don't see him moving.
Did
And neither
yeah,
does the community. They're all in the same. Most of the guys in the chat are saying the same thing. If you can get somebody to bite, sure, but
did Addison freeze again?
either
Yep.
that or he hasn't blinked in a while.
Yep, he crashed, he said. All right, we are going to get towards the end here. So if you have any questions or suggestions, drop them in the chat. Um, we are going to talk about a couple of the community cells that Brad had. What was the first one, Brad?
Mari Cooper. And the reasoning that Brian had was, um, let's see here, just the fact that he's moved around so much, and and the concern is he going to get any more valuable than where he's kind of been at? So and he also kind of posed the would you guys be willing to trade him? So it's kind of a I'd sell him, but what do you guys think? So I don't I Cooper's one of those guys where the guy's super talented, but it's just like it's hard to tell if it's him or the offense, but he's just never like been able to consistently stay up and be what people expect him to be, which is a wide receiver one. He's kind of been all over the place. It's kind of a boomer bust week to week type play. So
I think I would trade him for one of the wide receivers that are viewed a little bit lesser that I personally like more and plus. So if I could trade Cooper for like Allen Robinson and a little bit more, I would do that all day.
yeah, well, I like Allen Robinson more than Cooper. So
Right, but I think if you look at most like dynasty rankings, they probably have Cooper as a top 8 to 10 dynasty wide receiver, and Robinson's probably closer to the 10 to 15 range, maybe. So taking a perceived drop in value by one tier, like target a guy a tier lower, and then get a little bit extra on top. But I think it's also like, your flavor. If you like Amari Cooper, you love him, but a lot of people get frustrated. So you got to find that guy that you can do the deal with that loves him.
what do you think,
I
Rick?
I can see selling him, but it's not like I'm not doing it unless I have to. This is a 25-year-old receiver. He has been really good when targeted. The drops were overblown. I don't even care. Terrell Owens dropped the ball a lot. Jerry Rice dropped the ball a lot because they're targeted a lot, and that's going to happen. Um,
Rick said that Amari Cooper was Jerry Rice.
that is not what I said. I just said
Print
people.
it. Print it.
I
Clickbait,
said that
fake news.
people definitely um, just blew that out of proportion because that season, like half of his drops came on one drive. I just around the horned Addison's pictures. Somebody said that it looked like he was the first to lose on around the horn, so I black and whited it out. But I mean, he's 25. He's produced with Derek Carr when Derek Carr wasn't at his best. It all came down to targets and when he gets targeted. And I just don't think that if some of the other guys that are in that range, I mean, DJ Moore is right behind him. Like I'm gonna sell DJ Moore before I sell Amari Cooper. Um, Derrick Henry's 2 picks behind him. So those are the next 2 guys. Like I'm selling those guys before I sell Amari Cooper. Uh, I just I think this is a guy that can get even better. He's like I said, he's only 25. He's gonna be playing at 26 next year, and has his prime ahead of him. So I definitely, I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't sell him, but it's gonna take a pretty penny. And as much as I like Allen Robinson, I would not have Allen Robinson ahead of Amari Cooper.
My question is,
Even though when he plays for the Patriots,
If
Maybe
Amari
that's the most recent rumor.
if Amari Cooper goes, it depends on who the quarterback is.
Andy Dalton, obviously.
Oh no, you guys are just trying to ruin my life. You guys hate me. Um, what was I?
The others. Oh, were you gonna say
No,
something
go
else
ahead.
about Cooper?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the other sell is from our boy Anthony Leone. He says he'd sell Alvin Kamara just because he's way overvalued and he doesn't see him as a lead back, especially as he's getting older.
I have no arguments with selling Alvin Kamara for those very reasons. I mean, he's number 4 overall right now, and I mean, I can make the same argument for Zeke at number 5 for both of those guys being sells. So I'm definitely on board there, Taylor.
Sure, I like Kamara. I would like to try to buy. I would like to try to buy him if I could, but I guess based on what his current price is, I probably wouldn't be willing to pay up for him. But I think if I did own him, I'm more content holding him though because uh, I think production wise, you're trying to capture those running backs that year in and year out have the potential to finish top 5 at their position. And I think Alvin Kamara is one of the guys that has the potential year in and year out to be anywhere from RB1 to 3, 4, 5. Not that he will, but he's got the potential to. And a lot of these guys don't. And he's shown that he can do it even when he's in a committee type of backfield. We did it with Mark Ingram, and he was extremely productive. So I'm still on board with him. I would rather hold him than sell him. I want to know if I get to my second sell high here. I'm really excited about it.
Did I skip you?
You skipped me. I'm
Oh,
real
my
excited.
bad. Okay,
Yeah,
get her
you're
in
good.
there.
All right, it's Devin Singletary, which I know a lot of people like. He's my sell. Now, what I don't know is whether he qualifies as a sell high because I don't know how high his value is exactly. But I'm seeing a lot of people that have Devin Singletary like him a lot. And my concerns mainly go back to what Addison referenced earlier about how many roles are available in the NFL for running backs in the incoming rookie class. So Michael Liu, who works at DLF as well, he tweeted out a thread yesterday kind of looking through various landing spots. He listed Buffalo here. So these things I'm talking are things that he already had written in his tweet there. But so he's noted the Bills have the 3rd highest cap space. So that, shows that they have some flexibility to make a splash. They have a history of signing vets. They did it with LaShawn McCoy, Frank Gore. There's a perceived weakness, I think, right now with the AFC East with the Patriots down a little bit. This might be their window where they try to go for it. And that could be a home for a Derrick Henry, Melvin Gordon, because they're one of those teams willing to pony up the extra money that they want to get them. And so that would have me concerned about Devin Singletary's future as anything more than change of pace back. And I think he's a good back, but I don't think he would be able to produce super fantasy relevant stats week in and week out. So if someone is high on him right now and loves his efficiency and thinks now that Gore might be gone, that they can, plug him into an RB1 role, I'd be selling to that owner as soon as possible.
I will have no argues. I was never really big on Singletary. He did have some big plays and some nice games, but I also do not think that he's going to be a guy that is going to be a workhorse. I don't think he's going to get a ton of touches, and that's going to be hard to retain value, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Paul said it in the chat. Buffalo's brought in a lot of the top running backs in the rookie class for interviews. So if they go and get like one of these guys, Singletary then becomes kind of your change of pace guy, and I think it's hard to sell him. So if you're going to do it, now is probably the time while there's still hype, for sure. So
I think a great thing to do would be to try to take your 2nd round pick and your Devin Singletary share and trade up for one of them extra 1st round picks. If you can get in the top half of the 1st round, that would be a great move to make, and somebody might make that knowing that they can get that 2nd and Singletary. So I'm on board with you there, Taylor. Okay, Addison said he's going to try to figure out, and he wants to come back on because he was enjoying the show. And then he gave me his players for the last couple segments. So we're going to get into the guys that you would buy high, you would pay the max value that they're commanding right now. And Addison's first one is Chris Godwin. He already talked about A-Rob earlier, but those were his two. But we'll go with Godwin as a guy that he's willing to pay the price. He's going 10th in DLF ADP right
Yeah.
now. Are you willing to pay that price for Chris Godwin? I'm sure he had a lot of insight that he was going to share with us, but I don't have all of that.
I wish he was on here so I could, argue with him. But I think that's a really interesting buy high
Damn,
because his
what a nice
his
host.
yeah, his stock has been just rising. And when I was on DLF and saw that he was at top 10 ADP overall, I was blown away. I mean, I knew he was rising up, but I didn't know he was top 10 overall. And for me, I don't think his value can go any higher too much. I mean, he had an amazing year with a gunslinging quarterback. And so what happens if Winston goes away and I don't know, Rivers, Brissett, Brady, somebody else comes there that's not airing it out as much? I like Godwin as a player a lot. I think he's super talented, but I think I think a buying window might open sooner rather than later, maybe even this off season, that you could get him for just a little bit cheaper than he is now. So he's a buy. I definitely love him. I don't know if I'd buy him right now or if I'd wait until maybe something happens this off season in the next few weeks with free agency where I'm like, okay, now someone's a little worried about how much are they going to air it out? He's still the 1B to Evans or something like that, and then could get him for just slightly cheaper than paying top 10 overall startup pick value.
Yeah, I just can't fathom paying more for him than Mike Evans. I mean,
Yeah.
we had this discussion in our group chat the other day because Mike Evans came in pretty high in our wide receiver rankings from the team, but Evans I just can't see taking him over Evans. I just can't. That's a little crazy to me, but I was never high on Godwin, and I was apparently very, 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 very wrong. So, Brad, what were your thoughts on Godwin?
I've never owned a Godwin share, and I wouldn't spend the price it would take to get him. I mean, I love him, great talent, but like you, I would rather Mike Evans if I'm going to overpay for somebody. Like I've always been a bigger Mike Evans guy. Anthony over on Facebook says he wouldn't buy guys at peak value. They're only going to go down. And Chris Godwin's one of those guys. I don't, like you said, Taylor, I don't know that he's going to get more valuable than he is right now. And it's hard to see if he can, because the guys that are ahead of him are there for a reason. They're better, So I don't know. That's a tough one. I like the. I mean, I like the idea of buy high, but I just don't know if the value is going to be there. And if I'm buying high, I want to make sure the value is there.
Oh man, we could have roasted Addison here, just tag teamed him, and he ducked out. He must have known.
Because what he would have done is he would have served up some stats and made us all look like suckers with his geniusness from the PSU. So,
all right, I'm up next, and I think the first guy that I'm really willing to pay his price is Joe Mixon right now at 12th overall. I just think that this guy has been in a really bad offense. I think Cincinnati takes a leap forward this year. Obviously, whether Burrow goes there or not, they're going to get value by trading that pick if they don't. I mean, these rumors have been crazy this offseason. I 100% believe Burrow is a Cincinnati Bengal at the start of the NFL season. But if not, even if Carolina trades up for that pick, like Cincinnati's going to have so much ammo to improve that team, and it's going to be a better situation no matter what.
Well, and they'll get back, like Jonah Williams. They'll get back their starting left tackle who's out all year. I mean, that'll immediately help the offensive line because that guy's a stud.
But
I mean, I saw something today or maybe it was yesterday, talking about how if Jonah Williams was coming out in this draft, where would he be? And they were like probably a middle first round pick. And so what you're looking at is you're getting a hopefully franchise-changing cornerstone quarterback with another first-round worthy offensive lineman coming in to a line that actually improved throughout the year. I think the arrow is pointing way up for Joe Mixon.
Yeah, and they figured out how to use him in the second half of the season also. So he's a guy that I'm definitely willing to pay that price for. I actually got Mixon plus towards the end of last year for Amari Cooper. So that was one of them situations
Wow.
where I was very happy to do that. Um, and he would be my buy high. So Taylor, who's yours?
I mentioned him earlier. DK Metcalf is my buy high. Again, I don't know how high this is, but I'm assuming that the DK owner wants a first round pick for him, since he was probably definitely was a first round pick in last year's rookie draft, and then he showed out his rookie season. So he's a guy I'm willing to pay up for because of his production. I was already pretty high on him coming out last year, but he showed rapport with Russell Wilson. He excels in the same areas Russell Wilson excels in. So the deep ball, Russell Wilson's one of the best deep ball passers in the league. Wilson also shows the ability to improvise and kind of play off script a little bit. And I think that helps somebody like DK Metcalf, who has kind of been talked about as a less than stellar route runner as far as it comes to being a technician in the route running. I mean, that works well for him to be improvising. And he was just like an absolute monster with end zone targets. So not just being targeted when they're in the red zone, but literally getting targets in the end zone, which are going to be more likely, obviously, to convert into touchdowns. So I like him a lot. I think he's going to be the 1A in that offense sooner rather than later if he's not already, and delegate Lockett to more of a 1B or 2 role. And so I'm willing to pay up for him, and he's still I was pretty surprised. So he won't turn 23 until mid-December. So almost at the end of next season, he'll be 22 all through next season, which is just ridiculous with already a year of NFL production under his belt. So
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm definitely with you there. DK was my
thanks,
101.
guys.
DK was my 101 last year.
Yeah.
I loved the talent and the dude for what he lacked in route running, which route running is my favorite thing, but what he lacked in route running, he had everything else in spades. The dude is strong. He can high point it. He can run, and he ran way better routes than I think a lot of people anticipated from him in his rookie season. That's only going to get better. DK could be he could be the wide receiver one a year or two from now. He could be the highest valued wide receiver. He's got that type of physicality and talent. So I'm on board with that. Brad, who you buying
It
high?
is well. So I'm disappointed that Paul and I agree on the buy high. It's a guy I banged the drum for last year, and I think I swayed a few people, and that's Deebo Samuel. I love what he does in San Francisco's offense, that they use him in so many different ways because he's really. Rick had mentioned this about a rookie that we've been talking about recently, that he's kind of like a running back. Deebo has that running back type ability where he gets the ball out of the backfield and can make a big play. He can be a gadgety guy all over the field. And in Kyle Shanahan's offense, I mean, the sky's the limit for Deebo. Now, obviously, they're going to bring in other receivers. They've been talking about trading Marquise Goodwin and doing some of these things, but Debo's in that draft class with DK. Those were my two favorite receivers in the class. So I'm okay with buying both of them high, but I'm not okay that Paul and I agree. That could be a concern to me.
See,
Yeah,
okay,
I would
so
immediately.
going back to talking about AJ Brown, that's one of the
Mm.
reasons why I feel like he's so overvalued. I don't think the gap between him and Deebo was that big when it came to talent. Now the production was a little bit different because we're talking. Well, both teams were really run first offenses, um, but I just don't think Debo and AJ Brown are that far apart, and that's part of the reason why AJ Brown's a sell for me, and Debo would be a buy for me.
Right. Taylor, you were shaking your head. Why don't you like Debo?
I don't know. He's just like another one of those guys that I just don't love. I mean, I don't hate him. I don't hate him by any means. Don't get me wrong. But the value that he's at now, I can't get behind. So as I was doing my dynasty rankings last weekend, I can't remember exactly where I had him wide receiver range wise, but I was like, I know this would annoy a lot of people. Um, I don't know. I think I mentioned it in the thing I wrote last year. I was re-ranking the 2019 rookies. It was, I think his consistency lacked a little bit in year one, which I'm not necessarily shocked by as a rookie. But it's kind of what's preventing me from really buying in, because he had as many games with less than like 3 targets as he did with more than 7 targets. So it's nice that they were using him in other ways out of the backfield and things like that. But um, until he can show, like if he does it again next year, I think he put up 800 yards last year. If he does 1,000 receiving yards as a sophomore in the NFL, I'll buy in a little bit more. But right now, I'm just a little concerned. And as it comes around to that target competition too, is like there just wasn't a whole lot there last year. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders had a few good games, but he's not super spry wide receiver right now. What happens if they bring in? I don't think they'll take one of those top rookies, but one of the top free agents. I don't know. I'm concerned.
uh,
I won't own him on any of my teams, so I wish the best for all of you Devo owners.
just so everybody knows, we are going to cover some of these questions. I know we got a bunch over on YouTube. We are not ignoring you guys. We're going to get through this real quick. We're almost done, and then we're going to cover some of these questions that you guys have. So just give us 1 minute here. Yeah, Taylor's just wrong on this one.
I'm okay with that.
No, I can understand. My whole problem with this is AJ Brown at 23 overall, DK Metcalf at 37 overall, and Debo at 44 overall. Like, just the gap between those 3 players, I don't think watching them their rookie year that the gap is that big. And that's my issue with that rookie class from last year, is that I think Brown, Metcalf, and Debo should all be tighter in the ADP and ranking.
What was that hand motion?
They should be tighter.
Okay.
All right. They're not that their value is not that far apart, and I personally think that the value between like a back end second rounder and a top end fourth rounder is a huge gap. I think those gaps that high in the draft, that's a lot of value that is being given to AJ Brown that I think those other guys, I think they should just be closer together. Okay, so Addison, he had 3 guys on here for his sell lows. So these are guys that you're trying to sell, even though they're low. You want to get whatever value you can out of them, which is typically with older players that you don't see ever moving back up the ranks. But he had Greg Olsen, Sony Michel, and Mark Ingram as his guys that he's willing to bite the bullet and sell low. I don't have any arguments with those 3, except for I might kind of like to have Ingram on my roster.
Yeah, Ingram might be the only one that gives me a little bit of pause, but I'm also not opposed to selling him. To me, I kind of think of like a sell low as a strategy that we don't ever really ever use in Dynasty, because we're always trying to maximize our values. This to me is like a player that you're just gonna cut ties and whatever you can get, you can get. But for me, I think Ingram has a price, and that if someone's like, "I'll give you a rookie third round pick for Ingram," I'm not taking it. I have a price on him. Sony probably is one I'm looking to get out of pretty much whatever I could get, just because there's a lot of question marks in that situation. But I can see the argument for Mark Ingram though, right? He's older running back. They just lost their starting. What did Yonda play left? Right guard, who was a beast. You would think they might start to integrate Justice Hill a little bit. I saw a 3-round NFL mock draft yesterday that had, which they had one of the big 4 going to Baltimore in round 2. I don't think they'll do that, but I don't know if you could just imagine that they take one of those guys, because they mentioned Ingram's cap savings if he did get cut by a certain date or whatnot. So his value could plummet pretty quickly, but for now, I think he still does have value.
All right, Taylor, who's your sell low?
Mine was David Johnson. So I think he's baked, toasted, cooked, roasted, whatever you want to say. And if I had him on my roster and someone's willing to give me a rookie third round pick, I'm probably taking it. because I don't really foresee an instance where he's going to be able to improve his value a ton. There's the off chance that Drake signs elsewhere. They bring back David Johnson because he's expensive for this year and he has a few good games and his value recovers a little bit. But I think most savvy dynasty owners know I think he's going to be 28 when the season starts. It's been 3 years now since he had a really dominant season. So I think you're going to be hard pressed to get the value back that you think you could get for him. So if someone's giving me a third, I will take it and run.
Sorry,
I got nothing.
I'm looking for another player.
Dude, you're so right, Taylor. That's absolutely right. Thanks, guys.
I mean, I don't argue it. I mean, unfortunately, David Johnson's value is so low right now that you will have to do something.
I'm completely on board with that. I'm looking for a new player, is why I was quiet, because he was going to be my guy. So I'm on board with you. So Brad can.
Yeah, I mean, my sell low guy is Melvin Gordon, just because I just don't I'm just done with him. I mean, he came back last year, and whether it was because he held out or he's declining, he dropped. His yards per carry dropped to below 4. He just didn't look the same explosiveness. Obviously, the concern about those broken down knees because he, got hurt a bunch. And, I would sell Gordon. I mean, I wouldn't. So for me, selling low, there's a point where I'm I'll just hold on to it. If I have DJ and I get offered a rookie 3rd round pick, that would have to be a draft day move, and I'd have to know who's on the board. I don't know that I would just sell a guy for a 3rd round pick, because most of those times those are just dart throws. And, in this draft, it probably has value, because as we've been doing these rookie mocks, there's some nice 3rd round picks that are sitting out there. But in most drafts, 3rd round picks are really taxi squad guys. And
I don't know. I like this 3rd round this year.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. This 3rd round, I probably would go, okay, well, maybe I'll sell him, if a DPJ or somebody sitting out there. I might go, okay, I'll take a shot on a guy I like. But for me, it's Melvin Gordon, just because I think he's pretty much done.
I agree with you too.
Pretty quick. So.
Well, my only argument against that is
it's wrong.
I know I've been no. I'm on board with selling. My concern is, and I know I've mentioned this term a few times tonight, is there going to be another sell window that opens up that increases his value? So do we see an instance over the next 3 weeks where he does go to Buffalo and gets the big contract he wants, that then can be sold as, hey, he's the star running back there, he got paid, he's going to get his touches, to where it might increase his value just a tick enough to make the sell? Or do we think that, what he is right now is what he's going to be in a month, 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah, I do think that there's the difference with Gordon and Johnson, and the fact that Gordon's a free agent, and there probably is going to be a little hype built around his signing. But I think there's a lot of spots that he could end up signing that they've got somebody else there that is not going to go away, and that could actually hurt him. So I think that there is a possibility that it goes either way. So I just think if you can get some value out of him now, then you can do that, and you don't take the risk. I don't think teams are out there going, man, I can't wait to offer Melvin Gordon a contract. I don't think that's how the NFL's viewing Melvin Gordon. I just don't. So I don't know. He might have to take a smaller job and have that Gordon to Eckler role that they shared at the second half of last season when he came back, and that might be who Melvin Gordon is going forward. And he wasn't all that efficient as it was. So
I have a wild card player that I'm wondering about that just pops into my head.
So now we're skipping mine.
No, well, I'm afraid I'll steal yours, so you go ahead.
Yeah, don't steal mine twice.
I won't steal it, but go ahead.
Mine's Royce Freeman. Okay. Give me you don't even have to put the peanut butter on it. It can just be a jelly sandwich or just a peanut butter sandwich. This dude, he hasn't been able to beat out Phillip Lindsay. Draft capital didn't matter again. And now there's talk of them, looking at free agents and some of the big running backs in the draft. I don't think Royce Freeman is that good. I don't think he's bad, but I don't think that he fits the mold of neither of those running backs can catch. Neither of them have been very good catching the ball.
The
So
fact that Royce Freeman, I think, had more receptions last year than Philip Lindsay, and like if you just look at him, Philip Lindsay looks the part of like the satellite back, and you would think
right,
Freeman's the bell cow, and it's
it's
reversed.
kind of
It
like
doesn't make sense.
when Mike Tyson talks and the voice comes out, and you're like, "Whoa, I didn't expect that." That's kind of how the Royce Freeman topping Lindsay in receptions goes, but he's dropped immensely. I didn't like him. You know, people thought I was crazy for wanting Kerryon Johnson ahead of him in rookie drafts a couple years ago. That's worked out pretty well, even though Kerryon hasn't really done anything. He's at least maintaining some value, whereas now, you know, Royce Freeman is a 10th, 11th round pick. He could gain value if something goes right, but I mean, look how look how fast C.J. Anderson disappeared. And it kind of reminds me of the same thing, except for C.J. Anderson actually had some seasons where he was productive, but only because he was the only running back there in Denver. And Royce wasn't the only one, but yeah. So Royce Freeman, um, who was the other dark horse you had?
Well, I'm curious. Let's assume you still roster Antonio Brown. Are you selling
No
for
way,
literally? You're holding.
no way. There's too many ex NFL players that are out there talking right now that they believe that wherever Tom Brady goes, Antonio Brown is going to get another job. And if that happens, you're immediately going to be able to get a top half second round pick if that's when you want to get out. Right now, I think you just hold, and for what you're going to get, even if he doesn't come back, like you're not losing much compared to what you're going to get right now because people aren't going to give you. I mean, if you're not willing to take a third rounder for David Johnson, then you shouldn't be willing to take a third rounder for Antonio Brown, would be my thought. Because Antonio Brown could actually get like immediate value as soon as he signs with whoever Tom Brady signs with, if that happens. But
Yeah, I have Antonio Brown on a roster, and I'm holding him. I was just curious because I think some people that have him are so fed up with it they might have. Like I actually got him late last year off waivers because somebody cut him, and so I'm just curious if are you done with him or you say, hey, I'll wait it out. I think my concern is a little bit around the. I don't think he's really been convicted of anything yet. I don't know, but like just the like, what's Goodell gonna do? Like, is he gonna get signed to whatever team Tom Brady goes to, and then they immediately put him on the exempt list, and then he doesn't play for 10 games, and then that's the only thing I'm wondering about. I mean, granted, his value would go up though as soon as he got signed, but I just wonder how much he's actually going to play the rest of his career. Also, he's an aspiring rapper, so he doesn't need the game.
well, his rap career ended as it began.
Yeah.
It ended faster than his NFL career because that was one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my life. Um, yeah, I think that he's going to get another shot in the NFL, and the reason why I think that is because ex NFL players have been talking about it a lot. As he started this apology tour, they know way more than I do. And there's been guys that have literally killed people that played in the NFL after they killed people. So,
I've
um,
heard about that.
which one did you hear about?
It's like some tight end. He's some tight end. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Well, I was talking Dante
Ray
Stallworth.
Ray. Oh,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Because he actually got drunk, killed a guy, and then spent a short amount of time in prison, and then came back and played, which is crazy. Um, so yeah, I think he plays in the NFL again, and I don't know at this point. They probably have enough information on that whole situation to where they're gonna know relatively soon if he is going to be suspended or not, or what's gonna happen in that whole situation with all that. So, um, Brady, AB, and Dez all playing together next year. Um, yeah, Ray Lewis wasn't proven though. Dante Stallworth's the only one that I know that was proven that he killed somebody, and then was allowed to come back and play. And I mean, it was manslaughter. It wasn't murder, but he did kill somebody.
Uh, Burfict killed some people, I think, during his heyday in the middle of the field there. So Juju killed AB.
Plaxico Burress played after he shot himself.
Yeah,
He came back, Anthony.
It's good stuff.
Yep, Burress played again. Lewis played after his trial, even though he's found not guilty. Mike Vick after the whole dogfighting incident. There's been a lot worse that people have done. Ray Lewis was in it. They found him innocent. He wouldn't be kicked out of the league. There's no way he'd be kicked out of the league. Anyways, we have a lot of questions, so let me scroll up here. Peter Killian over on YouTube said, "How do you feel about Hardman's value in Dynasty?" Brad, why don't you go first?
He'd be a guy that I would like to own, but I don't think I'd want to pay to get him. I don't think I'd want to pay much more than what he was worth as a rookie pick. I think in rookie drafts, where was he going, like late first, early second? Like, I wouldn't mind taking a shot on him for something like that, because he has potential to continue to develop. But he's one of those guys that's going to be a long play. I think you'll have to continue to hold him for another year or two before you really see a lot of value return on him. But I like him as a player. I mean, he definitely fits Andy Reid's offense pretty well. What about you, Taylor?
Yeah, I moved him up my rankings a little bit. I think regardless of what Sammy Watkins does, Mecole Hardman's in a pretty good spot. But especially if Watkins leaves, and Hardman gets thrust into kind of the third option in that passing game behind Hill and Kelsey, that bodes well for his development. And I think when you've got an offense like that, Andy Reid, you've got a young quarterback that is going to be there for the foreseeable future. That's the type of player you're taking risks on. So, but like you said, if someone says I want your 110 for my Mecole Hardman, I'm probably not paying that. But he might be like that type of player that I want as the plus. So if we're talking about some of these deals where you're taking an Amari Cooper and then quote unquote downgrading a tier, and then you can get a something plus, like if I could get a Robinson and Hardman for Cooper, if you found somebody that's really high on him or something like that, if he can be the plus, I'd be all about that. As opposed to even taking maybe like a second round rookie in the 2020 draft. I'd rather have him because I know his situation and I've seen him play in the NFL.
I'm looking to get Hardman everywhere because, I mean, this dude performed when Tyreek Hill was out at the beginning of the season, or early in the season. Obviously they have a lot of options. They had a lot of options in that if Watkins leaves, like Hardman could easily be a back end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3. I don't know if I agree with Robert that he's going to be 1,000-yard 9 TD guy. If you're talking receiving, probably not. Now he might have a couple punt returns or something in there because that dude's just he's got that skill level. But I think now's the time that if you want him, you got to buy him now. Because if Watkins says, "Hey, I'm not coming back," then that immediately opens up that wide receiver 2 spot. And with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, being the wide receiver 2 could be a very good thing. So I'm definitely on board with that. Alex says in a PPR 2 quarterback super flex, it's either 2 quarterback or super flex. I'm not sure. Rookie draft pick 102. Would you stray away from taking a rookie quarterback if you already have Lamar and Stafford? I only have Kamara as a legitimate running back. Jonathan Taylor or Swift are ballers. I'll start this one. If you're not taking a quarterback at 102 in a super flex or 2 QB draft, trade back. Trade back or take that quarterback and then work on getting the running back later. I just think you're losing a lot of value in that spot where you could, do that trade back a tier and get a bonus on top. That would be my take. Taylor, what do you say?
Yep, same. I think if I'm 102, even if I don't need a quarterback, if Burrow goes 1, I'm probably taking Tua 2. I mean, especially if you have 2 quarterbacks, it doesn't hurt to have a third decent one to injuries happen. We saw it last year with quarterbacks were falling like flies. But like you said, if you don't want to take the quarterback, there is definitely somebody in your league that needs a quarterback or that loves one of the incoming ones, and you can trade back and still get your guy and get a little bit on top of it.
So
Well, and especially with the fact that Stafford's been hurt the last 2 years. He mentioned his quarterbacks were Lamar and Stafford. Well, when one of your starters is ended the year injured and missed a considerable amount of time, you probably need to take a quarterback there just to insulate yourself against injury. But
William Kovac says, thoughts on Calvin Ridley? Is he a buy low? What trade value? Brad, why don't you start us off on Calvin Ridley?
I love Ridley. I don't know if you necessarily. I mean, he's kind of in that middle ground. I don't know if he's really a buy low. I mean, I'd consider him more buy low than buy high because I think people would kind of be, um, kind of low on him just because Atlanta as a whole was kind of a dumpster fire last year. But I would buy him. I would buy him for. I mean, if you're considering this draft class, he's probably a back half first round pick because I like Jerry Jeudy more. But that might be the, I don't know, thinking about it, it might be him and Lamb might be the only two receivers in this class I like more than Calvin Ridley, at least at this point. So, he's probably 1-8 or later, 1-9 or later, I guess.
I think I would go a little bit earlier, maybe, but same thinking. Like, I think him and Judy are, they're not the same players, but they are comparable players. And you have one that's shown NFL production on a pretty good offense historically. I think that might put Ridley ahead of Judy for me. Lamb's kind of a wild card. If he ended up in a super great spot, it'd be hard to pass up on just because the intrigue. But I think I would give up like a mid first for Calvin Ridley. I like his situation. I like his future prospects because I don't think Julio's breaking down by any means, but Ridley remains a key cog in that offense. And once Julio does start to slow down, I think Ridley could start to see even a bigger piece of that pie there in the offense.
Yeah, I think I would feel very comfortable giving 105 for Ridley. Um, Maybe even 104 because I think I like him ahead of Rager, but I like Judy more long term. So that would be where I'm at there. Calvin Ridley, the dude had 10 touchdowns his rookie year. Um, if if we see Hooper sign elsewhere, then there's more touchdown upside there, plus more reception upside there because Austin Hooper saw a lot of volume last year. So I just think that there's a good chance that he makes up some ground. Um, so I'm definitely on the buy side. I don't know if he's necessarily okay. So where'd he go? I was just looking at. He's at 48 overall. I guess he is a little bit of a buy low because I would probably say that he's in the probably 36 to 40 range is where he should be right now. So he isn't far from being in the range, but he is a little bit low to me, just not a lot. What are you laughing at?
Oh, Anthony Loney wanted to make sure that you knew that we were talking about Calvin Ridley, not Riley Ridley.
What are you? I have no idea what that even means. Just because he's a bear?
Well, it's because he's his brother. I don't know. I just thought it was funny.
I
Anthony and Paul are over trying to rib you, trying to get you
definitely.
going.
I just have no idea where that comes from. I mean, you can make up all kinds of random shit, but it don't make any sense. Okay. Do we have any more questions? We've got guys on Facebook saying dumb shit, guys on YouTube saying smart shit, and I'm waiting for Facebook to redeem themselves. Oh, he said because of a bear, because he was a bear.
Oh,
No, I like Javon Wims more than I like Riley Ridley. So
he'll wind up being the guy that will sit on my taxi squad forever and never actually produce.
who?
I like Javon. I like Wims too a lot, but
Wims is going to get the shot at the second outside receiver spot next year with Taylor Gabriel getting released. Yeah, I think Wims. Well, they like Wims a lot.
Yeah, Ridley couldn't be outside. He's not got the athletic profile to be outside. He's got to be inside.
Any more questions? Any more questions? We're gonna call it a night. This was way longer. Between
2.5 hours later.
technical difficulties and everything else that happened. Yeah, this is not what I planned
It was
on.
good though. I loved having Addison on. He was awesome.
Yeah, Addison said that he really enjoyed it too. Hopefully his computer is fine because obviously buying new computers is not something fun to do. He said it's less than a year old too, so he's a little bummed out at the moment. So hopefully he figures that out. Um, as always, make sure to follow us, like, subscribe on YouTube, join
Already
our
hit 600.
join our Facebook group, rotoheat.com/dynasty, I believe is what it is. Gets you straight into our Facebook group. And what else we got, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, just thank you for everyone that's been helping us out. YouTube, we're over 600 subscribers. That's huge. You guys are amazing. Thank you again to Addison, and don't forget to check out DLF over on YouTube and DLF TV. They've got a lot of great stuff that they're doing. Obviously, everybody knows. I don't need to say it. But don't forget to check out RotoHeat.com. We've got because of our great Facebook community, we've got tons of articles that we're going to be writing on individual players as we go through the offseason to keep you kind of in the loop. For our Devy guys, John Emery will drop tomorrow, I believe, is when it's scheduled. So keep it locked in there. Keep it locked into YouTube. Keep it locked to Twitter at RotoHeat Fantasy for all your up-to-date Twitter content, because we all like to tag RotoHeat Fantasy in our posts. So you'll see everything that's going on over there.
Anthony's not allowed to comment on anything until he puts out a freaking TikTok video.
I know.
You
I was gonna when I
you
brought him
have
up earlier. I was gonna say our
you,
TikToker.
you have no opinion until you put out TikTok videos. Put your opinion out there. Taylor, any last words?
Nope.
All right,
No.
It's been fun.
we're calling it a night.